very good morning. Welcome to Shop on TV. I'm Hayley Green.
And I'm Sean Crawley.
And together we've got a really different night tonight. You'll be really pleased you've switched on because this is giving you, I think, peace of mind for the future. I bet there's something you've planned to do, but you keep putting off, writing that will. And we're going to tell you all about the reasons why it's so important that you do.
Yeah, tonight we're working in conjunction with Simpler Law. We're going to bring you fantastic offers, as you can see on screen already. If you want to write a will, if you want to get the ball rolling, make that first step.
It is that first step, isn't it? You keep putting it off. The kids are on holiday now, then before you know it, it'll be Christmas and you still haven't written that will, and you need to get it done. If you don't get it done, what you think is going to happen actually doesn't happen. I know we thought, being a partnership, we've been together for 33, 34 years. Obviously, our money would go to each other, but it honestly wouldn't.
No,
by
we're not
law.
married, are we?
No. So if you're at home thinking, well, of course it'll go to my partner. No, they know it'll go to the kids, and they know we're estranged from one of those children, so it won't go to. No, it has to be legally written down, and it's so important. And never think you haven't got anything, because it may just be that fabulous wedding ring. It may be your pet. As it's so important to have a will for all the things that you love, and to make sure it goes to who you love as well.
We are going to be talking about wills throughout the show, and we're also going to be talking about lasting power of attorney. Simpler Law have done us some fantastic offers across the range of services that they offer. In fact, let's show you some of those offers that we've got for you tonight. First of all, if you want to write a will, the suggested retail price on the will, and this was one of the things that put us off, at £180 it'd be brilliant.
Yeah, we thought it'd be really expensive. So when you see, well, actually, no, it's £180 to make sure what you want to happen to your belongings, what you've worked for all your life, actually happens. But actually, look at the price we've got on Shop on TV tonight.
£89.25. However, if you do want to split the payments, Simpler Law are going to offer you 3 interest-free payments tonight, just £29.75 on your first of 3 payments if you want to write a will.
And I bet that's less than you spend on coffee. I know we had a takeaway the other day. It was £50. Honestly, it is money so well spent. It is, honestly, it will be the best money you spend, and that peace of mind, that relief off your shoulders that you've done this will be incredible. Then we've got lasting power of attorney. Now we'll go into more detail about this. This can be either financially, helping to look after a loved one, or it can be health-wise as well. So £325, we'll change the details for you, is the price it should be. You can see again Shop on TV price, and this is the reason you get in touch tonight and secure these prices. You don't need to know any answers to any questions tonight, only that you want to do this. And of course, you've got that great price of £179.25, and again, you can split that over 3 payments, so £59.75 is the first of those 3 payments. Massive saving there, virtually £146.
And like you say, Hayley, it's just about getting in touch tonight, making that appointment and securing the deals with Simpler Law. The best buy, or the best offer that Simpler Law have for us tonight, is the will and the lasting power of attorney combined. Now, a suggested retail price there of £505 comes down to £249. And if you do want to split the cost, interest-free, again, they'll offer you 3 interest-free payments, just £83 on your first of 3 payments.
You're actually saving more than you're spending there. And if you do change your mind, you might go for the will tonight, and then actually when you think about it, think, well, actually I will do the lasting power of attorney. Of course you can alter that as well. Now, it's so easy to get in touch. Do notice on the bottom of that screen, it does tell you about a fabulous book. Now, this book is all about what the family should know. And I always say, and it's a little bit early, that you perhaps should have this book from birth, but that's perhaps too soon. You should definitely have this book as you go into your teenage years, because this allows everybody to know everything they need to know about your bank accounts. They're not hunting for letters and things, but actually it's not just letters now, it's emails.
Yeah.
So it could be your actual code.
Your passwords for your tablet.
Yeah, for your phone and tablet.
Home security,
so you
your
don't miss out
vehicle
on
details.
photos and things that are on your phone. Honestly, this book is absolutely amazing. So it's got every little bit of information that anybody would need to know in a situation, all in one book.
First 250 people who secure the appointment will get that book free of charge. It's worth £25 now.
And often people try and buy it,
Yeah,
so please do. When you secure your deal, you're securing that book as well.
Let's talk about how to get in touch, because this is really simple and straightforward for you as well. A very early start for us here at Shop on TV with Simpler Law, so we know we're going to be busy. First of all, if you want to go directly to the website, simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV. However, you can call the call centre. The team are live through in the centre right through till 3 a.m. for you, and they're ready to take those appointments.
And they're an amazing team. I actually did the lasting power of attorney for my mum through Simpler Law. Before we worked alongside them, they become friends. They make everything so easy. So please do jump on the phones. They're waiting. That's 0333 600 2600. Or, and I think this is the easiest option, if you're sat at home right now, perhaps you've been talking all day and the last thing you want to do is talk to anybody, you can just text Will, and this is always so busy, to 66777.
Yep, just text the word Will 66777, and then the team will be in touch with you later on today, not early in the morning. It'll be after 11.
No, they know you've stayed up late with us, so it'll be after 11 o'clock this morning. So do please get in touch in any which way. Take a photo of that screen through the show so you've got all those details. But remember, you're securing the deal, but you're also securing that fabulous book.
However, if you are used to using our website, you can go directly to the Shop on TV website, and when you do that, you'll see there's a little logo that says Simpler Law on there. You just click directly onto the Simpler Law logo and it takes you through to this page. It tells you all the offers, and then you can fill in the contact form as you scroll down. Very simple, straightforward. Just your name, your email address, what you want to inquire about or what you want to secure the appointment for. Everything's there. Dead simple, dead straightforward. So do get in touch, however's easiest for you.
And that is the biggest thing. I think sometimes I'm scared to death about law, and I thought, oh gosh, doing a will is going to be so complicated. I'm not going to know the answers to the right questions. It's not at all. Honestly, it's so simple with Simpler Law. They make it so easy. You actually don't really need to know anything apart from you want to get that will done. Or the lasting power of attorney. Do join us for that as well.
Now, we're not alone. Joining us on the show from Simpler Law, Ian and Helen are with us for the entirety of the show, a whole 3 hours pretty much. It's lovely to see you both again.
Good to be here.
Ian, let's start with who Simpler Law are for anyone who's not heard of you.
Yeah, sure. We're part of a bigger group of legal companies providing private client legal services. We specialise in wills and estate planning. That's the reason we do this show. So you wouldn't come to us for any other area of law, which would scare Hayley to death, apparently.
It would, yeah.
But in all seriousness, this is what we specialise in, and wills is at the heart of what we do. So you won't come to us for like a boundary dispute or a personal injury claim, but if you want to protect your assets, if you want to make sure that everything that you've worked hard for goes to the people that you want it to go to, then we're the company that you come to. And that's the reason we do these shows. Part of what we're going to go through this morning is just helping people hopefully realise that they might be sat there thinking everything's okay, but they can't quite tell you why they think everything's okay.
Yeah.
So we just want to dispel a few myths and misconceptions and get people to think about this really seriously, because it's really, really selfless making a will, but you'll get something out of it as well. But yeah, that's what we specialise in, and again, that's why we do these shows.
It is like your final gift to your loved ones, and I know what you imagine will happen. You think, oh, of course that's going to happen. It's bound to, you know, just like we did. There's lots of misconceptions, and what you think is going to happen actually isn't. And that's the truth, Helen, isn't there? There's so many misconceptions. We just presume, together 33, 34 years, of course our money would go to each other if one of us died.
Yeah, and there are so many people in your circumstances as well. And I think it's because there's this kind of myth that there's something called a common law spouse.
That was us, yeah.
And that doesn't actually exist in the law. So no matter how long you've been together, whether you live together, whether you've got children together, if something happened to one of you, the other one wouldn't receive anything at all from your estate, as you found out by going through the process.
Yeah.
But there will be a lot of people out there who will not really think about that. And sadly, a lot of the time we come across these scenarios is when it's too late to do anything about it. So you're absolutely right. One of the reasons we do the shows is to make sure that these myths are kind of put to bed, that people really understand the importance of making a will, so that they're making an educated decision. Yes, I need to get a will in place because of my circumstances. There's lots of other myths out there. People think, well, I'm married, I want everything to go to my spouse, so I don't need to do anything at all. That's not always true as well. It depends how big your estate is and what assets you own, whether your spouse will actually receive everything. So even if you're married and you think everything will be fine, you need to make sure you get a will in place to make sure that really happens.
And life is so much more complicated now, isn't it, with sort of mixed families and children from different parents and things. It's so important, isn't it,
Yeah,
to get
that's
a will
absolutely
written?
right. If you've got children from different relationships, you can end up in a scenario where it's a bit of a gamble as to who dies first, as to which children inherit, because people don't understand that if one of you dies and your estate does pass to the survivor, when they die, it's their children that will inherit their estate.
Only their blood children.
Exactly. So the children from the first person to die will not receive anything at all. So if you have got children from different relationships, it's a really simple thing to put right by doing a will, but it's making sure that people understand these consequences. And there's so many different scenarios. You know, every person that we speak to and go through the consultation and ask about their circumstances, by the end of it, they're like, I didn't know that would happen. That's not what I would have wanted. I'm really glad that I've spoken to you and made the will, because there's absolutely no way, even in 3 hours of doing this show, that we could cover every single scenario.
Hours.
No, absolutely.
I would just encourage people to take that first step and have a conversation with us. And then we can explore your specific circumstances, because everybody's different.
Without doubt.
Their family scenarios, their assets are all different. So it's really important that they take advantage of a bespoke service.
And when we talk about services from Simple Law, there's many different services that they offer, but they specialise, as Ian was saying. Some of the services we can see right here, can't we, Ian?
Yeah, we're fortunate that we, because of people like Helen, we don't have to go outside of our group of companies to provide any services to our clients, so we can meet all their needs. But it really does all start with wills. You know, that's the thing that people don't always take that first step to make, again, while we do these shows, because putting that in place, then it might lead on to other things like lasting power of attorney. You can see there that we deal with trusts as well, and we also deal with not just helping clients at the time of writing a will, but also their family at the point of need. So we deal with probate and estate administration. So we can basically help our clients with any of their needs, but we just specialise in this one area. And, you know, that's really important for us, because that makes us, you know, sort of a master of one trade rather than a jack of all trades. And that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And lasting power of attorney, I think everybody will have heard of a will.
Yeah.
But what is a lasting power of attorney? We will go into more detail a little bit later on, but anyone that's just switched on thinking, what, I've heard of that, what is that?
Yeah, sure. I think you're right. I think wills are sort of in the back of our mind somewhere, and lasting power of attorney perhaps isn't as in the forefront of our mind, if you like. A lasting power of attorney actually comes into effect whilst you're alive, but it's a document that you can make today whilst you've got mental capacity to do so. So whilst you're okay and you can make decisions for yourself, you can create a lasting power of attorney that would name other people or another person that would step into your shoes and make decisions on your behalf if you were unlucky enough to find yourself in a position where you couldn't make decisions for yourself. So you were involved in an accident, or, you know, we're all living longer. Dementia is really prevalent at the moment. You know, we're hearing about Alzheimer's, and if you're caught out by something like that, if life throws you that curveball, if you made a lasting power of attorney when you were well, you can name someone to step into your shoes when you find yourself not well. So it's a really, really valuable document.
Because that's another thing with Helen, that I presumed, you know, I've always looked after mum, so surely if mum was poorly, I could sort all mum's financial affairs out, I could sort all mum's health out, and that's not the case.
It's not. No. It's absolutely not. I mean, if you think about it, there are so many hoops that we have to jump through when we're dealing with our own assets. So, you know, you phone your bank up and you have to give the password and, you know, go through data protection and remember all these 16 digits and things like that we really struggle with. If you're trying to deal with someone else's affairs, even if you can get to speak to an individual, the very first thing they'll ask you is, are you the account holder? And if you're not, they won't.
It stops there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And if they then know that the person has lost capacity, quite rightly, they become a vulnerable person then. And obviously all this protection kicks in to make sure that nobody's taking advantage of their circumstances. But that makes it really difficult for you. Even knowing that you're trying to do the right thing and trying to help this person, you can't actually speak to any of their any of their banks, you can't deal with any
Providers of
utilities,
anything,
you
yeah.
can't do anything at all. So, and people do just assume that, you know, we're married, surely that means that, but if the account's in one name, the other person has got no right to deal with that at all. Which is why the lasting power of attorney is such an important and powerful document.
Sadly, like Helen said, these things only tend to be found out for real when something bad has happened.
Late.
And then it's, So again, I know I keep banging on about this really early on, but that's why we do these shows, because people will be sat there thinking, I don't need a will and I don't need a lasting power of attorney. But just have a breath and just ask yourself, why do you think that? Who told you that? You know, the last thing we do is scaremonger. That's not what we do. We just want to share the facts and the information, because sadly at our office we get what we call it's an awful term, but we get the too late phone call. This has just happened, can you do something? It's like, we can't now, but we could have done something. So, you know, if you sat there thinking, I don't need a will, I don't need a lasting power of attorney, ask yourself why you think that. And actually, our experience is, for most people, that assumption actually isn't an assumption, it's really a hope.
Yeah.
I hope that if I pass away, everything will be okay. I hope that if I lose capacity, that these people, or that the right people would step into my shoes. Well, forget the hope, because unfortunately that fails quite a lot, and just do something amazing for yourself and for your family tonight. And speak to the team at Lincoln now, they're there, or 333 600 2600. I always say this on every show, and I mean it. I know how cheesy it sounds, but no one ever regrets putting estate planning in place.
No.
But you or your family might regret that you didn't. But no one makes a will and then goes, oh, I wish I'd not done that.
It's a relief, isn't it?
Absolutely, and if you haven't actually written a will, it's the upset that it can cause as well after you've gone. And I don't know what happens when you go, but if you're looking down and watching your family fall out because what they thought was going to happen isn't happening because you didn't write it down legally, it's so people are in such a horrendous place already because they've lost a loved one, and then all of a sudden life has really changed, brothers and sisters falling out, whereas if you'd have written everything down, it could have been, it's not going to take away the pain, but it could have been a lot easier.
Yeah, and this is just about getting that ball started, isn't it? Making that appointment, taking that first step. You've probably thought about writing a will, and then you just don't get round to it. That was the thing with us. And then we were also concerned about the cost.
We just kept putting it off.
That's been taken away.
Yeah, cost-wise, honestly, the prices are amazing. And I did worry as well that it'd be complicated, and it's not complicated. It is so easy. You've got all the prices there. We're going to start off with the will. Should be £180. £89.25 is your price today, but you can split that over 3 payments. So £29.75 is the first of those 3 payments. You're securing that deal if you jump onto the phones or send that text right now or get onto the website. And of course, you're securing this fabulous book as well, What My Family Should Know. Don't forget, we have got the lasting power of attorney. We'll go into more detail in that, which should be £325. You've got a great saving there.
Yeah, huge savings across the board, whichever one you're looking at. But the lasting power of attorney, the ShopOnTV offer price is £179.25. But with those flexible payments, if you do want to spread the cost directly with Simpler Law, just £59.75 on your first of 3 interest-free payments. And then the combination is the best value out of all of them, because you're going to get the will and the lasting power of attorney. Should be £505 down to £249, but your first payment, if you split the cost, is £83 on your first of 3 payments. Now, something else that's very important to point out is the book that's detailed at the bottom of that screen. The first 250 people who secure an appointment, whether it's a will, a power of attorney, or the combination, first 250 people will get this book. And Ian, when we talk about this, when you first introduced this, I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? Because it's everything you need in one place.
It helps you take stock. We hear quite a lot, clients will say, oh, I don't really think I've got much and I haven't got anything. And then you find out that they own a house, but because they're not selling that house, they don't see the value of it, and then they might have a savings account. But interesting things are pensions, you know, sometimes frozen pensions that they may have forgotten about. So this really was born out of our estate administration department. So one of the things that you do when you make your own will is you can choose who's going to administer your estate and carry out your wishes, and they're called the executor, and their job is to gather in everything that the deceased has got. So what this does, it allows you to sit down and actually take stock of everything that you've got, but it goes a lot further than that as well, because, you know, we were getting stories coming back about, you know, someone had all their information you mentioned earlier, like on a tablet, but no one had a passcode to get into that tablet. And, you know, we don't have photo albums particularly now. We have digital folders with memories in, and unless you leave access to that somewhere, then unfortunately these things get lost. So it really was born out of that, and you're quite right, you know, it just allows you to sit down with a cup of tea, if you like, and take stock of everything that you've got. The interesting statistics that came out of the back of it when we were putting this together, it's believed in the UK there's actually £5 billion worth of pensions that have gone unclaimed.
Gosh.
5 billion.
Yeah, but if you think about it, if your elderly parent, you know, dies when they're in their 80s or 90s, do you really know where they've had a job and where they might have paid a pension?
No.
So pensions don't get found, but they think it's £5 billion. They believe there's £2 billion of unclaimed life insurance policies. So again, someone's taken the time to pay for an insurance policy, but it's not being located, so it's not being claimed. And similarly, there's 850 million apparently sat in UK banks, again, that could be with loved ones, but those accounts weren't found. And this all comes full circle to using a professional to deal with it and actually document everything right. And this just helps you sit down and have that conversation and make sure that things aren't lost. So yeah, that book, it started out as a small thing and became a bigger thing, and yeah, it's incredibly popular. And as you've already said, the first 250 people that secure one of the offers this morning will get that for free.
So many people do try and buy that book, so if you do want to secure that deal, all you need to do is get onto the phones. The team are there right now, or just text Will to 66777 saying you want to secure these deals, and of course you want to make sure you secure that fabulous book as well. Loads of ways to get in touch. I would take a photo of that page, jump onto the website, jump onto the phone, and the guys are amazing. If you've just got a couple of questions tonight, I'm sure they could answer them really quickly, but the idea tonight is securing your offer, and then they'll get back to you later on.
Yeah, you don't need anything.
Today.
That's the great thing. You don't need anything with you. It's just about securing that offer. So simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV. You can call the call centre, as Hayley was saying, 0333 600 2600, or the easiest way is to text the word Will, as you can see there. Will to 66777.
I always do all the competitions with the text. It's so quick and so easy, and this will be, it's not a competition, but actually you will win tonight if you actually get your will started and get that will sorted. It will be peace of mind knowing that your loved ones are going to get what you want them to have, what you've worked so hard for, because honestly what we think is going to happen actually doesn't. And that is the truth, Helen, isn't it? Whoever you are, whether you're a single person, whether you're in a family of 4, whether you're remarried with children, if you're in a partnership, we all need a will, don't we?
Yeah, that's it. I think everyone really needs to consider having a will. I think one of the things that we really like to get across on this show is that a will is much more than just leaving your assets. So a lot of people understand that the will distributes the assets to your loved ones, but it can do so much more than that. Such a powerful document. Ian mentioned appointing the person who's going to deal with your estate, your executor, which is a really important role. You know, this person is going to be going through all your history and your accounts and dealing with everything that you've ever come across in your life. So you want someone that you know and trust to do that and make sure that your assets end up in the right hands. So choosing an executor is really important. In your will, you can also choose guardians for your children. So if you've got children under the age of 18, it's really important. I think we'll talk about that a bit more, but it's really important to appoint guardians. You can pass on family heirlooms, you can make charitable gifts, you can talk about your funeral wishes, you know, all these things that are really personal that you perhaps don't sit around the coffee table with your family, you don't talk about it. You know, people find it
we're not
really
good
difficult.
at that, are we?
No, we're not. We're really
No.
not. And this is a really good way, if you don't want to have those difficult conversations, at least make sure it's written in a legally binding document, which by doing your will, you can do that.
And that could be your funeral choices, it can be where your pet goes.
Exactly. So many people talk to us about pets now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people care more about where their pets go than passing on assets to their family in some cases.
Enough about my son now, let me tell you about what I want to happen to my
Talk about
dog.
the dog, yeah.
But you can choose who looks after your animal. You can make cash gifts to go alongside. If you don't have anyone to look after the animal, we get a lot of people who leave them to charities and then make a donation to the charity to make sure that that loved pet is rehomed and things like that. So there's so much you can do in a will, but that's the thing, everyone's circumstances are so different, and for different people they will have different priorities. There will be different things that will be the first thing when they get into the consultation. I want this to happen, and that's their most important thing, and for everybody that's completely different, but that's that's the reason. I mean, our team are brilliant. They speak to so many people. They get used to dealing with different people's scenarios and the way people deal with writing their will as well. For some people, it's really easy. You know, it's straightforward. It's a nice paperwork exercise.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's a lot more emotional. You know, they might be talking about family circumstances that are difficult to talk about, but our team are trained to be able to speak to you. And you're absolutely right, they become friends throughout the process. You know, you'll be speaking to your one consultant.
Well, they put your team are so good at putting you at ease. We can talk about it because, as I say, we did Hayley's mum's power of attorney before we even did the shows, wasn't it?
It was just like sitting down and having a chat and a cup of tea. And me and my mum are scared to death about anything. I'm scared about anything legal. If there's a police car behind me with the lights on, I did it, and I'm absolutely hopeless. But the great thing is, they just make it all so easy. You don't need to know anything. You don't need to think, oh, and no question, not at any point did I think, well, I can't ask that because that sounds silly.
No,
you never made me feel like I always felt that I could ask whatever question I felt I needed to.
And a lot of people don't even know what to ask. They don't know the information, but we will talk you through the whole process and hold your hand through it. So we'll ask all the questions. What's really good is we give you information as well before the appointment, so you know the types of things we'll be asking, so that you've got time to have a little think about it, and you know, before you actually go through the process as well.
And Ian, for anyone that's watching thinking, no, I really don't need a will, what happens if you do pass and you haven't got a will? You know, we presumed it would go to each other, but what actually happens?
Yeah, I think this is a thing that isn't so well known, is that every adult in the UK has a will that's sort of given to them by default. So if you don't write your own will, you're actually accepting what we call the government will, which is a set of rules that was introduced in 1925 called the rules of intestacy. So it's a one-size-fits-all. We've just heard Helen there just talk about different scenarios and talk about all the things you can do when you make your own will, which is all personal. It's all bespoke. You know, every single document we write, by definition, is unique because it's for you.
Yeah.
The rules of intestacy is just one set of rules that's a default position. So if you pass away, the question is asked, did you have a valid will of your own when you passed away? If the answer is no, then what you see on the screen is what you get. So everyone actually has a will given to them by the government for all intents and purposes. The first question that's asked of you when you've passed away is, are you married or in a civil partnership? So it's all about your marital status, then your bloodline. And frankly, it doesn't care about you or your family or any conversations that you've had, because legally, if you haven't made your own will, this is your will.
It's just yes, no, isn't it?
And it's a series of yes, no questions.
Very black and white.
Yeah, that lead to a distribution. And in some cases, if there's no family, all the money can go to the Crown and go to no one that you care about. So it's really important. If you care about everything that you've worked hard for, and you know where you want it to go, then the only way of ensuring that's going to happen is to make a will that's your will. Otherwise, you're leaving it to chance. And this is where we hear the assumptions and the presumptions, like you've been honest enough to share with us about, you know, you've been together 33, 34 years. Totally understandable that you would assume, and that everyone looking at you would assume that you're going to leave everything to each other. But actually, the rules of intestacy makes no provision for unmarried partners at all.
We were blown away when they explained that wouldn't be the case whatsoever.
That could be us hopeless in a way, because
there might be people watching us this morning going, well, that's not right, and that's the problem, and you know, almost disbelieving, going, well, that doesn't seem right. And it isn't really about right or wrong or what morally you feel is correct. It's the law.
Yeah.
So, and it's really, really simple. You either pass away with a will that you've made yourself, where you've taken control and you've said what you want to happen, or you pass away with a government will. There is no middle ground. It's one or the other. If you haven't made your own will, you're said to have died intestate, and then a series of questions is going to determine where everything you worked hard for, where that goes to. And that, unfortunately, is very rarely what you want to happen, if ever. Well, truthfully, we've never, ever drafted a will. With all the 200,000 clients, we've never drafted a will that mirrors the rules of intestacy.
No. It doesn't make sense, does it?
No, because it's not personal.
No.
It can't be. So, you know.
And the world is so different now. And the thing, and there's so many. You tell us a lot of stories that have happened, And one that really sticks in my mind, and it's a gentleman that was on his own. And the reason I bring this up is I think if you perhaps you are by yourself, you're not married as yet, you think, well, what's the point of me writing a will? I've got no wife to leave it to, I've got no children to leave it to. And this really hit me because I was like, oh my goodness, everybody needs to write a will, because what happened?
Yeah, well, it was the young gentleman who died suddenly. He's a medical professional. He was only in his 40s and he suffered a pulmonary embolism. But he'd never married, he'd never had children. But the reason that it was a really sad story is the backstory to this is that when that poor gentleman was born, his dad decided to walk out on the family. So for whatever his reason, so he left the family, leaving mum to bring up basically 2 boys, and this was the youngest son, if I remember correctly. So for decades, no contact with the dad. But unfortunately, when he passed away, because he never made a will, and we'll never know why. Was it just because he was in his 40s, so, you know, he's going to put it off, or did he just assume that it was going to go to his family? We'll never know the answer to that question, but sadly he passed away without a will, excuse me. So he died intestate. The first question, as we mentioned a second ago, is, are you married or in a civil partnership? And this gentleman never married, so the answer was no. The next question it asks is, do you have children? The answer was no. The next question after that is, do you have parents? Excuse me. And of course he did. So it was split equally between his mum and the dad that he never knew.
And the dad he'd never,
and the mum had to find the dad. And
that was the difficult thing. Is this poor lady's going through this awful thing. No parent should bury a child, so that's already horrible. But then of course that's then compounded by the fact that she's got to track down her ex-husband, who walked out on them when he was a baby.
I haven't seen for years.
Yeah,
makes my hair stand on.
No, and it just. And when people hear that story, or I'm sure people had a similar reaction to you and to me, and anyone who's sort of decent and has got a moral centre will go, well,
it's not
that
right.
didn't feel right. But that's the whole point, is it doesn't matter whether it feels right or whether it feels like it's morally correct. The facts are the facts. Is unfortunately this gentleman passed away without a will, so he got the rules of intestacy.
So he got the government will.
That's what happened.
He got the government will, yeah. And okay, there's a backstory there which makes it worse, but again, if you sat there watching this morning, don't leave it to the government to distribute what you've worked hard for. Take control, do something amazing for
yourself. And to think
today.
that was written so long ago, and Helen, life has changed so much, and we touched on this just a little bit. If you have remarried, you've got children from different marriages, again, you would presume it might be a family, they've been together for 15 years. The kids think they're brothers and sisters, you know, they are one unit. But again, it's not guaranteed that all the children will...
No, you would automatically assume that all the children would be treated equally, wouldn't you?
Of course, yeah.
But sadly, because of those rules of intestacy and the black and white questions that are asked, that's not how the estates are distributed. So when the first partner dies, obviously if they're married, it will then go to the spouse, or the majority of the estate goes to the spouse. And then when that person dies, it passes down the bloodline to their children.
And not to
any stepchildren. So really it depends who dies first as to which branch of the family will receive.
Will inherit.
And you can imagine that that's really difficult. I mean, if you're the person inheriting, that's difficult because you know that mum and dad would have treated everyone the same. And if you're the person not inheriting, just because of the order that people died in, it's really difficult. But that's what the rules of intestacy do. I mean, there's so many scenarios that we come across in our probate department. We had a very sad story where the reason it was so sad is that we knew that the deceased had wanted his estate to go to his neighbour. They'd been neighbours for 50 years, they were like family, you know, they'd been really close the whole time, they'd looked after each other through their old age. And he'd actually gone to the trouble of writing a will with a company and never signed it. So it didn't take effect, and he died intestate, and he didn't have any close family. And what we had to do is we had to trace cousins that were in different continents all around the world who'd never even met this chap, never even heard of him. And we had to tell them that they were inheriting, and it was a significant estate as well. And this neighbour, who was obviously intended, the neighbour was actually lovely and said, the gift was the friendship for the years. I don't need anything else. But the fact that we knew that this man wanted him to inherit, and he didn't. You know, one of the big parts of our service is making sure the will is signed
That everything's
correctly.
right. Yeah, that's you are
yeah.
specialists. I mean, we talk about, and I'm sure a lot of people at home will talk about the templates that you can buy.
Yeah, because you can just buy them, can't you, online and write your own.
But you
sort
can
of
do
thing.
it wrong, can't you? That's the point.
I get a bit frustrated with this a little bit, and I take it too personally, if you like, you know, because I've been involved in doing this for well over 20 years now. So I like to think, Helen will laugh at this, I'm setting myself up for a fall, that I have half an idea what I'm doing, and yet templates are put out there that can give you the impression, and understandably so, they want you to buy the template, and then you just fill it out yourself. But the template's going to give you no advice. So unless you're a qualified will writer or you're familiar with this area of law, how do you know that you're doing everything right? You know, we've said earlier in the show that our team, our client care team, are really highly trained, and this is all they do day in, day out. So they've seen every scenario, and we actually have all the questions, but our clients have all the answers. But we know which questions to ask. You won't ask those questions of yourself if you don't know to ask them, because you can only know what you know. I'm not being rude when I say that people are ignorant. I'm ignorant to everything outside of will writing.
Yeah,
you know,
that's your area.
Yeah, if it comes to a car, I get in, I push a button and I drive it. But if someone said, you know, could you service a car or could you do that? Like, no, I'll take it to a garage.
Yeah.
You know, I had root canal surgery recently. I didn't go on the internet and go, I think I can do this myself. I'm not trying to be facetious,
but it's
such
so
an important thing. And these templates aren't free. You still pay money to them, but ultimately you're responsible then for doing the job. I don't understand that. You know, it's basically it's your last act on planet Earth, and it's so important that you get it right. And Helen's just explained there that we had one situation where a guy had actually made a will but hadn't signed it. You know, so he didn't have a will. We see a lot of these templates are either really badly written or they're not signed and witnessed correctly, because even in this digital age, a will isn't valid until it's been dated, signed and witnessed by two independent people, and we help you through all of that. We don't just say thanks for your money, have a will, good luck, bye-bye. We want to make sure that it's going to work and that it's right for you. You know, we even offer services that make sure that the will moves when your personal situation moves. You know, someone might make a will today, you've got to make a will based on your situation today. But what if in 5 years' time you've got married or remarried or had children or had grandchildren or moved house? So we can help with all of that. So that's what we're about, because that's all we do. But these templates won't do any of that for you. And I would say to anyone that's thinking of making one, please don't. Honestly, you wouldn't try and pull your own tooth, you'd go to a dentist. Most people wouldn't try and service their own car, they'd go to a dealership that knows how to deal with that car. You know, go to a professional. I feel quite passionate about this because it's almost
so much that can get wrong there.
And it's almost worse, because when we see these wills, we can see the intent, and then when they fail, it's like, if they'd have spoken to us, we could have done that correctly in 15 minutes.
In a way, that's worse than not have written.
Absolutely.
Not
doing anything
you can actually see what they wanted, and it's not actually going to happen because it wasn't written right or signed right, or it can be as simple as that, can't it?
Truthfully, these templates will say, who do you want to deal with your will? You write that in, and then it'll say, you know, where do you want your assets to go, and you'll write that in, and that might do a bit of a job. But that's all it'll do if you get it right. But it's not giving you any advice. We actually carry £5 million worth of professional indemnity insurance. So when we give you advice and give you recommendations, if we make a mistake, you and your beneficiaries are protected. You've got some comeback. Now, touch wood, because this is all we do, and we're specialists in the area, we've never had a professional indemnity claim because we do it right, because this is all we do. So if you're thinking about making a will, please don't try and do it yourself. Speak to a member of the client care team. They'll hold your hand through the whole process.
And you do.
Yeah, and I promise you, we won't write your document until you're 100% happy with the advice that we've given you and you understand it. And whether you take our advice or not is entirely up to you as well. But of course, we're there to guide you. You're our client. It's your will, not ours. So we won't draft the document until you're 100% happy with the advice we've given you and you're 100% happy with the instructions you've given us. And if you're not happy with any of that, within 2 weeks of you giving us your instruction, you can turn around and say, you know what, I've changed my mind, I'll have my money back, and we'll give you your money back. But again, touch wood, that doesn't happen because we do the job right.
People are so
And you do, you make it so easy.
We just need you to take that first step. Sorry to cut across you, but you have said this morning that, you know, you mentioned Christmas, which I giggled to myself, but I'm thinking that's how quickly you can
the
blink
year
sometimes.
goes, isn't it? The kids are off now, so it's holidays. And then all of a sudden they'll be back at school.
You've all had to go at me this morning because I've not been to the doctor about my cough.
We have.
Yeah, which is true because...
Which was how long ago did we see you and you were going that day?
And now it's on the TV, so you've got to go.
Which is partly why I've done it. But in all seriousness, that time, you know, you're so quick
it just
and
goes,
and it's busy. And if we're really brutally honest, these early hours of the morning, there's sexier things to spend your money on than a will, or so you think.
It's true.
But that's because you haven't been through the process. And I promise you, at the end of the consultation, and we've had Charlotte on the show, if you remember, who actually does that job.
From the team, yeah.
And she says, and we see it every single day, that at the end of the consultation, when people have been through it, it's like a weight's lifted off them that perhaps they didn't even know they had.
Yeah.
And no one ever finishes that consultation with, I wish I'd not done that. Every single time it's like, that I've put a tick in that box.
And you see that in the Trustpilot reviews, because there are so many reviews for you, and they talk personally about the person they spoke to.
Helen and I love that, because it's very rare someone goes on and says Simple Law are great.
Yeah.
They will say that Charlotte was great, that Jack was great, that Gemma was great, you know, because you said it yourself, when you went through the experience before we even knew each other, we understand what our clients need. So, you know, we do have all the questions, but genuinely we do care. You know, because we care about getting it right, because we know how important this is. I always say I'm really lucky to have found this profession, because we get to run a business by genuinely helping people, by doing something amazing that we know is going to work as well. Without being too doom and gloom, there's an inevitability to your will being read. So we know that once we've done that, you've done something amazing and it's going to work.
And when it comes to wills, there are so many different things that you can put in there, as we've talked about. It's not just about your inheritance, it's all these things that you see here.
You might think that you don't own anything, but of course a lot of you have a property. You don't think about the property will then be sold. It may be your pet, it may be your children, it may be an engagement ring.
Choosing what age your children or your grandchildren inherit.
So you don't even think about things like that.
You might not want them to have it too young.
Most of our parents don't want the kids to inherit 18. They think it's too young.
Yeah.
Well, if you think back to when you were 18, that's the last thing you should be given. Yeah.
Truthfully, Sean, I was a bit of a legend at 8.
I can imagine you
were. You really?
No, for all the wrong reasons. There's a picture of me on my 18th birthday with a mullet, and it's not a good look. And I'm looking at that picture as if I'm someone else and thinking, at 18, if I'd have come into any kind of money or responsibility, I'm not sure I've done the right thing.
No.
We're not just talking anecdotally. We know that the parents of young children, when we ask that question, they're like, well, actually, could they inherit at 21? Could they inherit at 23? And there's even conversations around that about they can inherit in, you know, stages.
Right.
Again, it's just about taking control. Your will it's personal to you.
Well, the wonderful thing is you can still look after them for years to come. You know your children better than anybody. So if you know at 18 they wouldn't be right. And I think, well, actually, if I gave them a bit when they were in 21 and then perhaps a bit more when they were 25, you can make it absolutely bespoke
to you. It's your decision. That's the great
And that doesn't happen if you haven't got a will. Please do not presume that everybody knows what you want to happen to your belongings, however little or however much you have. It's law. Unless it's legally written down, and we'd been together 34 years. I say that because I can't remember if it's 33 or 34.
Neither of us can.
But it's around about there. So we presumed, obviously, if one of us died, our families know that we would want the other one to have that. It would not have been the case at all if we hadn't written our will.
We hear that a lot as well. Yeah. We hear that my family knows what I want to happen.
Yeah.
I don't need to do anything because my family already know. I have had that conversation. We do talk about it.
But that's not binding.
No,
is it?
And it's out of our family's hands, isn't it?
Yeah. The law is the law, and if anything happens to you, your estate has to follow the rules of intestacy if you don't have a will. So that's worse, because the family, we've had that conversation with families where they've said, Mum would not have wanted this to happen.
No.
So,
And it could be even that perhaps there's a brother or sister that's gone astray, that they don't
not
get
part
on,
of the
they
family
haven't,
anymore.
and they would be entitled to, and perhaps Mum and Dad wouldn't have wanted
we
them.
get that a lot as well,
we see that where one child is much closer, maybe has made sacrifices to look after Mum or Dad as they've got older, you know, kind of given up their own career to look after them, or sold their house and moved in to look after them, and the parents normally want to reward that or recognise that. Or, as you say, families are much more fragmented now, and, you know, there are sadly situations where you don't speak to different members of the family. Well, again, going back to the intestacy rules, if you haven't got a will, they treat all your family the same.
All the same.
So all your children, if that's the line that will inherit equally. And a lot of people don't want that, even if it's just things like, well, I want my daughter to have my jewellery because it,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
there's specific items that
Sentimental.
pass down
Yep. Yeah.
the girls, or, you know, likewise with watches and things like that with men. That's not how the intestacy rules work. They treat everybody exactly the same. It's really black and white, and you know, everyone's circumstances are so different. Writing your will is all about taking control of your own circumstances, your family, and making sure what you want to happen actually happens.
And
it's
making
your
it so
final,
much easier for them. Yeah, we're
it's
saying
your
the same
final
thing.
gift.
It's
isn't it?
selfless.
It is completely.
But you will get something out of it. I mean, everyone, when they go through the consultation, it's quite cathartic. You know, Helen did make the point that some people sit down and it's dead easy. It's just a breeze for them, and it's nice and simple. I tell you, when our consultants panic is when a client says, oh, mine's going to be nice and simple. That's when they go, oh. Because interestingly, then other people will come to the consultation and sort of say, oh, I think this is going to be complicated. That's because, you know, they don't do it every day.
No.
Yeah.
And actually what they want to achieve is relatively straightforward for us to do for them. But, you know, you can only find that if you make the call, because some people might be watching this show this morning and going, mine's really complicated, or it's going to take forever, or I wouldn't even know where to start. Don't let that be the barrier.
No, it
because,
doesn't
you
matter,
know,
does it? Because they're talking to you and you know.
we honestly will, without being patronising, we will hold your hand through the whole
you do.
process. We understand that this might be the first and only time that you make a will, but we'll guide you through all of that and make sure that you've got that. But I promise you, putting it off guarantees that if you pass away, you're getting the rules of intestacy. That guarantees that none of the decisions are yours. And I'm sorry, but if you've worked hard your entire life, no matter what you've got, and you've got loved ones around you, whether it be family or friends, and you want to care for them, it isn't enough to have that pint with your best mate or to tell your son or your daughter. It has to be legally binding. So don't leave it to chance, because if you die intestate, a set of rules that's almost 100 years old is going to determine what happens to your estate. Make a will, and then you've determined what's going to happen. As Helen said, you take control. It's personal, it's your will. And it's one of the most amazing things you can do, because it is your last act on planet Earth, frankly.
It is. It's your
And
final gift to
I think most people know. I think most people in the back of their minds, they know that they need to write a will, but for some reason they've not got around to it, or, you know,
They
like you
think
say,
it's gonna be
there's
expensive.
other things.
There'll be someone sat watching this with the mobile phone next to them, as we all are, maybe people dual screening or whatever they call it these days, you know, and they could very easily just text the word will to 66777 and we'll call you back later today. That's as difficult it is just to take that first step.
Process.
And again, no one regrets doing that.
And
you'll never regret sending that text or phone in.
That's what today is all about. Is that first step. It's actually giving you that nudge that you know you need to actually do right what Ian was saying just then, get in touch. So you could go first of all for just the will. So if you're going for the will, you see, I thought it'd be really expensive. £180 that is making sure everything you want to happen actually happens. But actually, our price tonight with ShopOnTV, or this morning, £89.25, and of course you can split that over 3 payments of £29.75. I bet you spend more than that on coffee a month. I know for us, we had a takeaway the other night, and it was nearly £50.
Yeah.
You know, that is really nothing to make sure what you've worked so hard for is actually going to go to who you want it to go to. But then lasting power of attorney, we are going to go into more detail in this now.
In just a couple of moments, we're going to explain what that's all about. If you've not heard, or you've heard of it and you don't know what it is, the lasting power of attorney that Simpler Law offer, suggested retail price of $325 comes down to $179.25, and if you want to split the cost with those 3 interest-free payments, just $59.75 on your first of 3 payments. There are 2 types of lasting power of attorney, and we'll go more into detail about that in just a couple of moments. If you're in Scotland and you're a part of our Scottish viewers, it is a joint document. But the best value that Simpler Law have got for us tonight is if you do a will and lasting power of attorney, because the suggested retail price there is £505. That comes down to £249.
You're saving more than you're spending there, so that is a really great price.
yeah. It's just £83 on your first of 3 interest-free payments if you want to take advantage and split the cost. Details all there for you. Remember, the first 250 clients will also receive that free book. It's brilliant.
It's
What My Family Should
excellent.
Know. In there, it's got everything you need. It's got all your utility bills, pensions, bank accounts.
It's all the things you'd be hunting for.
You fill it in, and it's all in one place.
And it's not so easy to find anymore, because it's not just going through the cupboards and going through letters anymore, because loads of things will be on your phone, they'll be on your tablet, and if someone doesn't have the password to your tablet, we know a situation of a sort of a family member, the gentleman died, wasn't expected to at all, and they knew that what they needed was on his tablet, and nobody knew his password, apart from luckily his grandchild that played on the tablet, and he managed to get on. But had he not known, that would have been locked and they would never have been able to get that information. So all that information is in that book. That book, you often ask to buy it, so please, if you want to secure it with the deals tonight, do get either onto the website or onto the phones. Have a look at all the ways to get in touch. It's so easy. So either you can get in touch on the website.
Yep, simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV if you want to go on the web. If you want to call on the call centre, their team are there. They're there right now. They're through right until 3 a.m. and you don't need anything. You don't need any information. It's just about securing the offer. And
they're often very busy, but do just, hang on. They will be there ready to speak to you. No, you don't need to know any answers to any questions tonight. Just jump onto the phone, which is 0333 600 2600. But the one we really like is the text.
And usually the most busy on these later shows, as Ian was just saying, if you've got your phone there right by you, you just want to get started. You want to make that first move. Just text the word will to 66777 and the team will be back in touch with you after 11 o'clock. We say this morning because it is today now. So after 11 o'clock this morning, they won't wake you up early because they know you've been watching the show. So it'll be after 11 a.m. and it could be later in the afternoon, obviously, depending on how many calls and texts we get through.
Just don't leave it. I know we put so many things off. I know, again, my mum needs a patio doing really badly. And last year we said, we'll get in touch with the guy and get the patio done last year. Still patio tripped over the patio again yesterday. Mum, we need to get this patio done right now. And yeah, we must get in touch with the guy. We said that in January, we said it in March, we said it in April, we're saying it now in July. And I bet at the end of the year we'll say, oh, we should have got the patio. It's too late now. The weather's changed. What's the point of getting them out now? It's actually just taking that first step.
This is so much more important than your patio.
It's so much more, apart from Mum tripping over the patio.
Yes, of course.
But it's so much more important. It's about making sure what you've worked so hard for goes to the people that you love. And it doesn't, honestly, do not presume what you think is going to happen because you think your circumstances, of course it will go to my partner, it will go to my kids. It doesn't work like that. It goes to a sort of a government sort of will, which is very, very old and will not be what you want to happen at all. So please do make sure you get in touch and secure those deals and secure the book.
So that's wills we've covered so far, and we will go back to wills if you've just joined us, but we're going to also talk about lasting power of attorney. And a lot of people, I think, Ian, might not have even, or they'll have heard of it, but they won't actually know what lasting power of attorney is.
Yeah, most people have got an idea what a will does and have thought about a will. I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah, lasting power of attorney, not so well known or thought about, but essentially is a lasting power of attorney comes into effect whilst you're still alive. It forms part of the estate planning piece because it's about you being looked after and about your assets being looked after. There are two types of lasting power of attorney. There's one that deals with your property and financial affairs, and there's one that deals with your health and well-being. So they're very different documents doing very different things. They're as valuable as each other for those purposes, though. But essentially, probably oversimplifying, a lasting power of attorney is something that you can make today, and you can only make today whilst you've got capacity, so you've not lost your mental capacity. And what you do is you say, if life throws me a curveball, if I'm in an accident or I'm made ill, and sometimes there's positive reasons, like you might be out of the country for a while, but it's usually people make it to protect themselves against curveball, planning for the worst and hoping for the best, in other words, is you create that document today and say, I could name you two. I mean, you're a bit sketchy, so I probably wouldn't, but in all seriousness, I could name you two as my attorneys, and then if life threw me a curveball, because I did that, If I get it signed and witnessed and all dated correctly, and again, that's what we'll help you do, it has to be registered with a government body called the Office of the Public Guardian. But once that's done, if I've named you both as my attorneys, for all intents and purposes, all the institutions, all the companies that I deal with will now deal with you as if you're me.
Right.
That's how powerful
So
it
if you
is.
were poorly, but you still needed to pay the bills for the house, still
Yeah.
needed to pay the mortgage, and
Yeah.
we would be able to do that. We'd be able to step in and do that.
Yeah, that's such a powerful document that when I had capacity, I said, I trust Hayley to make the decisions that I would make for myself. So if I couldn't make them for me. And this is a document where most people think, well, we'll probably never need that, but it's awful if you've been unlucky enough to see someone that you love either in an accident or become ill, and then you try to help them and you're doing it from a genuine place of, you know, I want to help even my wife and my husband. You can't, because the second that you try and speak to those institutions, while they might be understanding and sympathetic to the situation, again, there are legal obligations that they're not just going to give money or take instructions from someone where there's no authority to do so. What always fascinates me, and again I understand it, is there might even be married couples now watching this going, well, we'd be able to access each other's bank accounts and we'd be able to do this, we'd be able to do that. And I understand why people think that. But again, if you just take a second and think, today, whilst you're both fit and well, can one of you go into each other's account? My wife's called Jeannie. Could I walk into Jeannie's bank today while she's fit and well and say, oh, by the way, I'm Jeannie's husband, can I access her accounts, please? We all know the answer's no,
Definitely
of course not. No. So if sadly Jeannie was incapacitated yesterday, so now she's a vulnerable person who needs more protection, if I walked into the bank now, what do you think's changed?
It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
you
that
But people will say, well,
Yeah.
and actually, if you went in now and said, oh, sorry, my wife's being diagnosed with an illness, she can't make decisions for herself, can I access the money now? The answer's still no.
Well, it's logically, it's
Yeah.
right. You
But
know.
this is part of the presumption, the
But it's the
assumption.
misconceptions again, like the will. You presume being married
Yeah.
that you would be able to get into each other's account, but then when you say that, we know you can't do that.
Yeah.
I presumed I'd be able to, you know, look after mum. I've always looked after mum.
Yeah.
But when you said, you know, when you ring someone up and they'll say, who are you?
Are you the
And I'll
account
say,
holder? It's always
I'm
the
Hayley
opener, isn't
Green.
it?
They don't want to speak to
No,
you.
they won't speak
No.
to you.
No.
Yeah, which is quite right.
Yeah,
for
of
course.
data
Yeah.
protection and
Of course.
protecting that person. But when you're doing it from a place where you're trying to help somebody, it's really frustrating. And if you can imagine that at a time when actually you're trying to look after someone as well who may have suddenly been taken ill or suddenly not been able to make their own decisions, and you're having to deal with the stress of that at the same time as trying to help out. One of the big things is if somebody goes into care and someone's trying to access funds to pay for care, and you can't access that person's money to pay for their own care. So, you know, you find that children are having to find their own money to be able to bridge that gap, if you like, and make those payments.
Gosh.
So it's a really difficult circumstances.
Now, as Ian said, there are two different types of lasting power of attorney. So let's
Yeah.
just cover the differences if we can.
Yeah, so the property and financial affairs is, I think, the one that most people understand. So
Okay.
it's dealing with things like bank accounts, paying utility bills, dealing with investments, maybe dealing with HMRC and paying tax, all of those kind of financial transactions that might happen on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you imagine all the people that have something to do with your lives on a day-to-day basis, all your utility providers, that kind of thing. They are all the people that you can deal with as part of the Property and Affairs LPA. So you effectively step into that person's shoes. So when you're in that circumstance where you're trying to maybe cancel a phone line or pay a utility bill and access the bank account, you can deal with their property as well. So you might even be dealing with something like a property sale, well, for someone who's not got capacity to do that for themselves. Whereas the health and welfare lasting power of attorney, that's more about their health and well-being. So we talked about making decisions for someone who can't make decisions for themselves. So this is about deciding what kind of medical treatment they get,
Okay.
Yeah.
what kind of social activities they take part in, even down to where they live, you know, that kind of thing. Even simple things that you don't even think about that are really important to people, like what are they going to eat and what clothes are they going to wear.
Yeah, my friend was in a terrible accident and she was vegetarian, and if her
Yeah.
parents didn't have control of that, they would have just fed her
Exactly.
anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so important to think about doing a lasting power of attorney now, because you're appointing the person that you know knows what you would want to do, the person that you know and trust to make those decisions for you. If you don't make that decision and appoint someone, then it could be anybody, a complete stranger who's making those decisions for you. So it is such an important and powerful document.
I think they're both as important as each other. I know when we went to do mums, first of all, it was sort of the property side of it that we looked into. But then, of course, when we talk to you and it's just, you just make it so easy, and then it made sense as well to do the health and welfare as well. Yeah. So we ended up doing both. And thank goodness we came to you, because you when we signed everything off, and of course we had to get a friend to sort of witness.
But the whole process, again, to go back to the basic of it, was completely foreign to us, wasn't it?
Oh, completely.
And you were really worried about it.
And my mum is a bigger
big
worrier than me, so there was the two of us.
But they just put you completely at ease.
We spoke to Marianne and Joanne, and they were both absolutely fantastic and talked us through everything, made it so simple. They became like friends. No question was foolish. I could email and say, oh, I forgot to say that, I forgot to ask this. But when we had you sent everything, we signed it all, we got mum's neighbour to sign it all, sent it back, and then you noticed that the signature was different to the printed
to the actual name.
And we had never realised that our neighbour for all my life, since I was born, and mum had known her for longer than that, her first name wasn't actually her first name, it was her middle name.
Yes.
So she'd printed it one way, signed it, and they were like, this is not, this needs to be what.
And that could cause problems when you went to use it. But of course, if you're using it, it means that the person's lost capacity, and then it's too late.
That would have been too late,
to change
which is why it's so important to use a professional service so that we can check those documents. Because the last thing you want is to get to the point of need and think, again, like a will, someone's gone to the trouble of attempting to create a will and then not signing it properly. The same with the power of attorney. Someone's thought about it and gone to that effort. And it is a complicated document. All the parties have to sign it. They have to sign it in the right order. It all has to be dated. So it is quite complicated.
It's all but
we give you really good instructions.
You do,
but sometimes, people do get confused, or the dates are wrong. The OPG, when you come to register these documents with the Office of the Public Guardian, they're very particular. And even just a little thing like a little crossing out or something like that, it's better that we go, actually, I'd sign this again and do it again, so that you haven't got that risk.
And what actually happens if someone hasn't got lasting power of attorney?
And they lose capacity.
What then happens? Because like you presume you could look after your mum, you presume you could sort everything out. We can't. So what does happen?
So the only option you've got at that point is for the family member to make an application to something called the Court of Protection for a deputyship order. Now that deputyship order gives that person the authority to make those decisions, the same as the power of attorney, but the process is completely different. So the lasting power of attorney is obviously a document that we draft, it gets signed, it's all done. This is an actual court process. So you have to start off by making a full application to the court. Now you can imagine it's a very legal process, so it's quite complicated. The forms are huge and ridiculous. The application fee, you've got the fees there, the application fee is £408 before you've even started, and that's just to submit it to the court.
Gosh.
In that form, you have to justify why you're the right person to make decisions for this now very vulnerable person, because they haven't got a voice now. They didn't say who they wanted to be appointed, so now you have to show you're the right person. So you have to undergo an assessment, which is an additional £100. The court might say, well, actually, we want a hearing because we want to ask you some questions about this. That's another £494. If you get that deputyship order and you act as a deputy for somebody, you have an ongoing supervision requirement as well, and that annual supervision fee there can be up to £320, and that's on an annual basis. So the costs are completely different from putting
and
a
you
power
might not
of
have
attorney
this money.
Exactly. And you can't access the vulnerable person's money because you don't have any authority. So And I think, you know, the fees, it's really easy to make a comparison. You can compare those kind of fees to the power of attorney fees on the left of the screen there, and it's totally different. But I think the worst thing about this process is that it can take up to a year or even longer. The courts are so busy. So you can imagine
a year
while all this is going on.
Yeah, you're trying to help a vulnerable person. You know, the scenario I said where mum's gone into care and you're having to access funds to pay for care fees and you can't do that. Imagine having a whole year where you can't make decisions.
You might have
You're trying
lost
to
them
bridge
in
that
that year,
gap.
might
Oh,
you?
gosh.
Sadly, that's what happens in a lot of our cases. Yeah.
Oh, that's devastating.
It is. It's a really horrendous process. You know, it's something that we can help with, but when you compare it to making a power of attorney, I'm not sure why anyone would take that risk.
Quite literally at the mercy of the court, and it's just awful. It's just a horrible phone. Excuse me, horrible phone call to get.
Yeah,
It
you can have it in place. That's the amazing thing.
And I think again it's that situation that perhaps you've heard of it because somebody was poorly and then you wished you had that lasting power of attorney and it was too late. We haven't done our lasting power of attorney.
No.
And we must, because it's never too early to make sure who you want to look after you if anything did happen.
Someone that could do it for you.
I know.
I'm just thinking about, have you got your phone on you? If you just text the word will
Where is it?
to 66777, I'll make sure someone gives you a call back later
It's ridiculous,
this morning.
isn't it? We're telling you at home, and we actually haven't done this yet, and we've say after each show we must do this
after every show,
and we will. We'll text Will after this show because this way you can actually get things started because we do put things off, don't we? We're forever thinking, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week, and then it never happens. But then sadly, it could be completely too late.
Yeah.
And that is disastrous
and
devastating.
And when we looked at those fees, that court application, all those different fees, the important thing is to get in touch and start that process, whether it's a will or whether it's a lasting power of attorney. So the website simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV. The team are in the call centre right now, and we'll talk more in depth about the team in just a moment. 0333 600 2600, and you don't need any forms, you don't need any information. It's just about securing these offers, or you can text, can't you?
Yeah, I love the text. Perhaps you're at home, perhaps you've been speaking to people all day today, and the last thing you want to do is talk to anybody, but just text Will to 66777, and what they'll do is get back to you later on today to sort out a time that's convenient to speak to you, so you can actually get the ball rolling. It's just to give them that little nudge, and sometimes you just need that little nudge, don't you? And the peace of mind. I know when we did mums, and honestly, they became friends, and it was so simple. And we find me and Mum are complete panickers, drive everybody crazy because we worry about absolutely everything, honestly. Drive it and like, for goodness, you know, it's not happened yet. Just
worry about it before it's happened.
Absolutely, worry about everything. So we were petrified, if I'm honest. And then we got onto the phone. We did a sort of a, what is it, technical FaceTimey thingy.
Yeah, that
and
thingy.
so I could sit with Mum and we could all talk together. Oh my goodness, and she was amazing, and she made it so easy. We weren't rushed at all. We sat there with a cup of tea, chatted through everything, realised what we needed, what we wanted, but by chatting, without us thinking, oh gosh, well, I'm not going to know that. We didn't need to know.
And
the simpler law made it so simple and got the information out of us.
Like Helen said, you were saying, Helen, it's not just you give everyone a heads up of what they might need once they've made the appointment.
Exactly, yeah. We send out a lot of information because you're absolutely right. For some people, this will be the first time that they've ever thought about writing a will, and we want to make it as easy as possible. So we send out all the information to prepare you so you've got time to think about it and have a read through that. We'll make the appointment at a time that's convenient to you. Best time is when you're sat at home, you've got time to sit with a cup of tea and just have a chat to us, and we'll go through that. And even if we get to the end of the consultation and there's still things that you need to think about, like if we've asked a question that you perhaps hadn't thought about and you need a bit of time, that's absolutely fine. We go at your pace. If we need to call you back 6 times to make sure that your instructions, you're completely happy with it, we can absolutely do that.
I think think I probably emailed about 6 times.
Yeah.
Forgot to ask that. Yeah. Forgot to ask that.
That is perfectly normal.
Everyone was absolutely fine. It wasn't a hassle, problem at all.
Yeah.
And we've talked about both wills and lasting power of attorney. We do have an offer that combines the both, don't we?
Yeah.
Which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. We find that most people, they'll know about one or another, and normally when they're watching the show they say, yeah, both of those sound like a really good idea, and then when they speak to us they actually ask more questions about the 2 types of LPAs,
right.
and they then want to add on the second LPA as well. That's absolutely fine. Today just make sure that you secure one of those offers. Just get in touch with us, take that first step, and then we can talk to you about what you actually want and need at the time of your appointment.
That's a really nice point actually. So if you look at the offers that we've got today, you just choose one now. If you're thinking, well, actually, I'll just go for wills now. But actually, when I talk to them, I'll ask them about lasting power of attorney. Will it be all right if I then add it on? And it honestly will. They're so understanding, and we'll sit, chat, talk you through, and you'll know what you want. So we'll look at all the deals, so you've got the prices right in front of you. Because I think one of the other things that we were worried about is we thought it would be really, really expensive.
Well,
we were
expecting way more than the suggested prices, weren't we, when we first did ours?
I mean, £180 is good, isn't it?
Wouldn't have thought twice about it.
No.
However, with our offer with Simpler Law here at ShopOnTV, it's less than £90. It's £89.25. So on your first of 3 payments, if you want to split the cost, it's just £29.75 on your first of 3 payments. If you want to go just for the will on its own.
And I bet you spend more than that on coffee each month.
Yeah,
I can't believe
easily.
how much a cup of coffee is. It's absolutely crazy.
Crazy.
So,
To the point where you won't buy it.
No, no, I won't. I'm like that. It's only water and a bit of coffee. How much can it be? Whereas you've actually got that peace of mind that what you want to happen to, what you've worked so hard for all your life, goes to the people that you love and that you want it to go to. You've then got the lasting power of attorney. Should be £325. You've got a great saving on that. It's £179.25, and of course you can split that cost over 3 payments, so £59.75. We had a takeaway the night before last. It was £50. That's one of those payments virtually paid for, which is crazy. Did you say you paid for the takeaway?
I did, yes.
Oh, you see.
I didn't actually, did I?
No, I don't. No, you didn't actually, after all that. And then you have got the will and lasting power of attorney. I think this is a great combination because you've got the biggest saving. You're actually saving more than you're spending here. Should be £505, £249. So you're securing these deals today. Incredible prices. Choose the one that you think's right for you now. If you want to add anything else on when you speak to the team, of course you can in the future. But do secure it now and also secure that book.
Yeah, secure that deal. You're not tied to whatever you go for tonight, as Hayley says, once you talk to the advisors. If you do, and you are one of the first 250 clients, remember, you will receive that book, What My Family Should Know. And this book, it's, when someone does pass away and you have to go around the entire house searching for this, that and the other, you're looking for bills and funeral plans.
My mum's will be a nightmare because she's got stuff absolutely
this
everywhere,
is all in one place,
every
isn't
cupboard.
it?
That's
and
it.
It's so many more things that you wouldn't even think about. Things like your utility bills and your council tax, home security. It might be the alarm code for the house. It could be things like the passcode for your tablet or for your phone.
Yeah, which your phone and tablet now are really all your letters, aren't they? All your emails, all your photographs.
Yeah.
You could lose all those
contacts.
photographs.
All your contacts.
Yes.
All your
who
memories
do we
are in
tell?
there,
It's
aren't
all
they?
there, yeah.
It can all be in that one
You can
book
say
for
as
you.
well what you want to happen to your pets, your animals and things. And of course you've got your memberships and all there in there. That's the digital. So honestly, I said when we first got this, because this book is so popular, lots of you want to buy this, and we should have this from birth, but that's perhaps a little bit too early. But from teenage years, you should have this because, it's so useful. Absolutely every bit of information
Everything
you
in
need
one place. So
is
the
in here.
first 250 people to secure an appointment will get this free of charge. It's worth £25. So it's definitely worth making that appointment and making sure that you get hold of this. That goes for whether you're going for the will, the LPA or the combination deal. In fact, talking of wills, we should go back to wills. Because when we talk about a will, it's something we've all heard of, something we're all going to use. But Helen, we talked about misconceptions when it comes to wills, and we're the typical example, aren't we?
Yeah.
We presumed, because we'd been together for such a long time, that
Yeah.
we would just inherit each other's money, but not being married, that's not the case.
I've suffered him all this time.
Absolutely.
Surely I should get that money.
Surely.
But that's not, and we really did. We didn't
yeah.
think for a minute that we wouldn't. All our family knows that we know what we would want, but it wouldn't happen, would it? Like
No,
that?
absolutely not. There are so many myths and misconceptions about it, and I think a lot of them relate to what actually happens if you die without a will in place. And one of the biggest ones is this kind of idea that there's something like a common law spouse. So if you have lived with somebody, or you've owned property together, or you've got children together even, that there is some kind of legal relationship there, and there isn't. In the eyes of the law, you are either married or in a civil partnership, or you're not. And it's that black and white. So if something happened to one of you, then the other one would not inherit anything at all from your estate. And you can imagine in certain circumstances that can be absolutely devastating for the person left behind. Not just because of the financial situation, but the difficult situation that actually
Well, you're
puts you in.
devastated already, and then all of a sudden it could be like for us that you couldn't have you'd lose your house. You know, it could be so difficult, couldn't it? It could be.
Absolutely. But there's so many other things as well that people are not aware of, and until they actually have a conversation with us, you know, we've spoken to people who we've gone through. One of the first questions we ask is, what is your marital status? And we've had people say, oh, I'm single. Oh, but actually, I'm single, but I'm still married, even though we've been separated for 10 years. And we say, well, do you realise that actually if something happened to you now, your husband that you've not seen for the last 10 years would inherit everything from your estate?
And you could be living with somebody else in another partnership, have a child with those.
And you've got children who you would want to inherit.
And your money would go to your husband.
Because legally you're still married. So it works both ways. It's very black and white. Yeah, there's no kind of grey area. There's no but, there's no what if. It's very black and white.
And I think will-wise, we always think about financially what have I got, you know, with my house and all things like that. But actually, and it's a horrible thing even to think about, but as parents, if you lost both parents, what happens to children if there's no will?
Yeah, so one of the most important things that a will does is that it can appoint guardians for your children. So if you've got children under the age of 18, I would say you definitely have to get a will in place, because appointing guardians means that you're choosing who you would want to look after your children if something happened to you, which is such an important, every parent can understand why that is such an important decision. If you die without a will in place and not appointing guardians, you're effectively leaving it to chance as to who steps forward. And you might think, well, you know, I know my sister would, you know, I know she'd step forward, but what if someone from the other side of the family came forward as well?
Could be both grandparents, couldn't it? Thinking they should have.
Thinking they're the person that should step in. And then there might be arguments, there might be disagreements. You know, in very worst case scenarios, the children can actually be taken into care while it's all sorted out. Fortunately, that's really rare, but you know, why would you leave it to chance? No. It's such a simple thing to do.
Because people don't know they are leaving it to chance.
No.
They don't.
They think that the conversation with the best friends or the sister or the brother was enough.
Yeah.
Or they'll think that naming someone as a godparent, for example, is enough. But that's not a legal position.
You see, until you said that, I didn't think that.
Well, no, if you've got children in school and you've been asked to sign a consent form, you know there's only two classes of people can sign that consent form. It says parent or guardian.
Not God.
So so you're either the parent, and obviously we're talking, sadly, it's awful for any parent to think about not being able to see the kids grow up. But the one really selfless thing you can do for yourself as much as your kids, if you like, is document where you would be happy for your children to go to. You know, Jeannie and I have got 2 young boys, and, you know, it gives me peace of mind that we know, our guardians know that if life threw me and Jeannie a curveball, we know that our boys are going to where we want them to go, and we've made that very clear through the will. So that's, you know, we don't have to worry about that now. But, you know, this is just another one of those things that can be made so much worse. Let's be really clear, things like a will and a lasting power of attorney don't diminish what's happened. You know, they don't diminish a bereavement, they don't diminish if someone's lost capacity through an accident or ill health. But what they do by being there is they don't make those situations worse.
No.
You know, we're talking about all kinds of horrible stuff. And, you know, we're all adults. We all know that life can throw a curveball. Life sometimes isn't fair. So what can we do to mitigate that? Well, we can put a will in place that makes our wishes clear, especially for our children. You know, until I became a parent, I didn't really get it. I don't think you can until you're a parent. But now the thought of my boys not going to where I would want them to go is sickening, frankly.
Yeah.
So you can see there that we put up on the screen. Go on, Helen.
It's just the not knowing as well. You know, the family that you leave behind don't know what you would have wanted.
No.
And then most people, most families that we speak to, they really want to do the right thing. They want to, you know, carry out the last wishes, and actually having a will there and knowing that they're doing everything. You know, all the things there about age of inheritance and, you know, leaving specific gifts and passing on heirlooms, they feel that it's quite a nice thing to be able to do, because it's like mum's specifically taken the time and said, I want so-and-so to have this specific item, and they find it quite nice to be able to pass those items on and know that they're carrying out those wishes. If you die without a will, nobody knows anything about what you wanted. And that, you know, even down to like funeral wishes, well, you know, did she want to be cremated? Did she want to be buried? We don't know. We never had that conversation.
Because we're not good at those conversations, aren't we? Are we? So
a bereavement is the single biggest reason for a breakdown in family relationships. Can you imagine? Emotions are through the roof. It's an awful time. And then if you haven't left a will, and questions like even something as simple as, well, is it cremation or a burial? If that conversation not happened, you could have, you know, a son and a daughter saying, well, I'm sure she would want this, I'm sure she would want that. And when emotions are high, that's when things get said that can't be taken back. And sadly, it's the single reason that family relationships break down is over a bereavement, and typically where a will hasn't been left because your final wishes haven't been made clear. So that's why I always say, and quite rightly so, it's really selfless. You will get something out of this, I promise you. You'll enjoy, might be too strong a word, but you'll enjoy the consultation. It'll be much easier than you think. And it's, you know, some people say to me, is it morbid? And it's like, well, no. You know, you're just planning for something you know that's going to happen, but is hopefully way down the line, but plan anyway. And all we do is we help you plan for what is an inevitability, but we help you plan for that. That's not morbid, it's quite cathartic. But in doing so, you've done something really selfless, because you've taken control. If you don't, you're just hoping that everything works out, and it never does. That's the thing.
No.
It never does, because the rules of intestacy and a family member knowing doesn't do what you want it to do. If you want to take control of what's going to happen, you have to create your own legal document. You have to say who you want your attorneys to be in a lasting power of attorney, and you have to put in a will what you want to happen with your estate and with your family and your loved ones.
because what does happen, for anyone that's watching, and I didn't realise this, we presumed we would get each other's money because we've been together for 30 odd years, so why would we not? The family would know that. But that wouldn't have happened for us if we hadn't written a will at all. What actually does happen if you haven't got a will in place?
Well, I think this is one of the things that isn't really widely known, is we've all got a will if we don't make one for ourselves. So there's something called the rules of intestacy, which Helen's just alluded to, which is a set of rules that was created in 1925 that basically is a default position to administer your estate if you've passed away without making your own will. So there's kind of two things going on. If you decide, consciously or subconsciously, if you decide I'm not going to make my own will, actually the secondary decision to that is I am accepting the government will.
You're taking this,
Which I appreciate on the screen there's probably difficult to make out all the minutiae of the detail on there. But it's one rule fits all. Now there's only 4 of us in the studio having this conversation, but we'd all have exactly the same will if we didn't make our own will. And I dare say that none of us are identical. I mean, Sean and I are very similar, that we're beaten down by the women in our life, but other than that... But
funny,
again,
funny because it's true.
It's true. But,
You're both very funny.
Funny looking.
and he's in trouble by default because I said it, and I'm in trouble when I get home.
You are.
But again, in all seriousness, you know, how can one set of rules
It can't.
It just doesn't work,
suit
does
millions of people? Now, there has to be a default position, otherwise it'd be carnage, wouldn't it? It's like, well, what? So that we live in a land of law, and the law says if you don't have your own will, so if you've not taken the time out to do what we're encouraging you to do, then you're effectively saying, I accept the government will. And that will all start with a question after you've passed away: were you married or in a civil partnership? And the answer to that question will take you to a series of other questions. And it doesn't care about what your family know or don't know.
No.
It doesn't care about what you wanted. It just doesn't. It's a default position that's just there to administer your estate, and that can be really upsetting if you have shared with your friends or family what you would want to happen, because when it doesn't with the rules of intestacy, that makes that situation even worse, because it's like, this isn't what Dad would want.
No.
This isn't what Mum would want. And that's the frustration for us, which sounds a bit selfish really, but the frustration for us is like, we could have fixed that for less than £1 a day over 3 months, and for 15 to 20 minutes in a telephone call. It's so easily put right. So I would encourage anyone watching this morning, if you don't want to speak to the client care team, I understand, because it must be 1:30, 1:45, I don't know what time is it here?
It is after
Something
one.
like that, yeah.
There you
Just
go.
gone half
So I
past
appreciate
one.
if you don't want the client care team now they'll be happy to take your call. They're there right till 3 o'clock. But if you don't want to speak to them, just text the word will to 66777. But just get that ball rolling, because I promise you that selfless act will be something amazing that you've done. Now, you won't know how amazing until the point of need. But we've seen situations where it's like, that's a good job they had a will.
Yeah.
Because without it, it would have torn a family apart. And it sounds melodramatic, but honestly, dying without a will, especially in today's society where it's not unusual to come across blended families, it can literally tear those families apart. So I don't know why you'd take that risk of thinking, I'm sure it'll be okay, because unfortunately it very rarely is. In fact,
And you often say we presume it'll be okay, but why do we presume?
Yeah,
I just think it's a human nature. It's a hope, isn't it? We don't wish bad on other people, but if life's going to throw a curveball, it's always going to happen to someone else.
Be us,
yeah.
It's always going to happen to someone else. And unfortunately, our experience is very clear on this, is where people assume or presume that something's going to happen, actually that's more of a hope, because they don't know. Truthfully, if you sat there watching me waffle on this morning, if you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I don't need a will, just ask yourself, who's put that in writing to you? Where have you got that information from? Where's that belief come from? Because if you really think about it, who's told you that you don't need a will, and why do you think that? And if you're just thinking, well, it's because we are common law husband and wife, as we said, that doesn't exist.
No.
There is a lot of misinformation out there.
A lot of misinformation,
and I think,
terrifying,
you know, if people speak to their friends and things like that, and they get incorrect information, but if it comes from someone that you trust, then you tend to just accept it.
Oh, the expert in the pub is terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't need
It's
a
our
will.
worst enemy.
Yeah, you don't need a will, and he'll come out with some term and they'll go, oh, well, Bob, I mean, he's been the pub quiz champion, and again, I'm not being too facetious, but and again, I understand it, but I promise you, find out for yourself, please. Make that all-important phone call to us this morning, or send us a text, because you won't regret doing that, and we'll take full responsibility for everything we tell you. You know, we're fully insured for the advice that we give. We're a professional, reputable company. In the nicest possible way, don't trust your best friend, don't even trust your family, and don't trust the guy in the pub, because unless they're prepared to put in writing to you the advice that they've given and take responsibility for it going wrong, how can you trust that it's correct? You might want to believe that your friend in the pub is true when they say, oh, you don't need a will because you've been together for more than 10 years and you're cohabiting, everything's fine. And that might sound great. Yeah. That's an absolute disaster waiting. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
It's just not right.
It's completely wrong. What you think is going to happen, and we do, I think we were exactly the same. We presumed, we've been together 33, 34 years. Of course, my money would be Sean.
Would you let a family member or a friend, sorry, Haley, would you let a family member or a friend pull a tooth?
No.
This is where I always go to, you know.
It's good. No, it's good. But I was thinking, if we'd have sat down with our friends, what you were saying about common law, I think if we'd have sat down with our friends, we'd have all gone,
definitely.
But the interesting thing is, none of you would have quite known why, because it's just this perpetual, everything will be fine. Yeah. And it really is sad that, unfortunately, it's only when something happens, when it's too late to do anything about it, that then everyone realises, you know, and quite often the reason we get phone calls at the office is because someone's seen it actually happen, and we do need to do something. So
we've got friends that still haven't written a will, and we preach to them, don't we?
Now, because
you know, we're like, you must write a will, and we know that one of them doesn't get on with their brother, and their brother would probably get.
Yeah, go to the brother, wouldn't it? Because they're not.
Depending on the situation, but the bottom line is this: it's really this simple. If you don't make a will, truthfully, you probably don't know what's going to happen.
No.
Because unless you have a full understanding of the rules of intestacy and the makeup of your own family and the thresholds that operate within the rules of intestacy.
What is the rules of intestacy?
That's the government will.
Yeah.
So if we haven't got a will, we have to have the government will.
Yeah, and that is the bottom line, is if you haven't made your own will, you will get given the government will when you pass away. It's as simple as that. No ifs, buts or maybes, and that doesn't care about you or your family. So
There's no emotion there, is there?
No.
And it only deals with the distribution of your assets as well.
Yeah, there's nothing personal.
You can't choose who deals with those assets because that's set in law as well. You can't appoint guardians for children. You can't specify the age of your children
all
inheriting.
the things you can do with
all
a
of
will.
those things. It literally says, here's your estate, this is where it's going. You know, there is nothing personal about it at all.
This won't be the case, and it's going to sound quite blunt what I'm about to say, and it won't be the case, but essentially if you die without a will and you leave it with the rules of intestacy, it's basically saying you didn't care enough to look after your family and your friends because this is now what's going to happen. And that probably isn't the case at all. It just meant that you didn't pick up the phone tonight, or you didn't send a text, or you didn't go and see a professional.
Or you just presumed it would all...
Yeah, but honestly, if you're presuming, just in the nicest possible way, please just stop doing the presumption thing now. The only way that you can make sure that what you want to happen happens is you take control, you do it. Make your own will, and then you can forget about everything else. And you know, after you've done it, you can almost forget that you've done it as well.
Yeah.
Just
there,
I've done that. Put that tick in the box.
Weight
and
off your shoulders.
Yeah, and then get on with your life. But do it now because life will get in the way.
For anyone at home thinking, okay, I'm going to make my own will. I've seen I can get things off the internet.
Template. I can
I
fill in my own.
Do my
I've already
own.
been angry this morning. I'm going to let Helen take this one.
There's just so much that can go
Does
wrong.
upset him, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
But there
it
are
really does.
templates, and we know people as well that have written templates, but they can go horribly wrong, can't they?
Really wrong. We've seen some terrible examples. I mean, first of all, you're getting no advice at all.
No.
You're still paying for something. You're paying for this service where you're getting no advice. And, you know, they're not cheap when you look at the prices that we're trying to offer to the viewers.
Yeah, with expert advice.
Exactly.
Insured as well.
And there's so much that can go wrong. You know, there's a reason that wills are written in legal terminology, and people don't like it. They're like, why can't it just be written in plain English? But the wording is actually accepted by the courts, and it does what it's intended to do. It makes sure things are distributed correctly. If you write something in layman's terms, there is so much that can go wrong. We had one where someone had written, I leave all my property to so-and-so. Well, property in legal terms is actually a property, a house. So what happens to everything else?
Oh, God.
And we
Right.
had another example where a couple had written their own will. And what they'd thought is they'd sat down and they'd gone, right, what we need to do is leave everything to the children, and that's what we both want to do. So they wrote this will, and the problem was that they wrote it together. So they both wrote on one document that they wanted everything to go to the children. Now, he owned the property, and he died first. And that will said, I want everything to go to the children, taking no account of the survivor.
Oh my goodness.
And that caused all sorts of problems. So there are so many things where you think, oh, I know what I'm doing. It's just filling in the blanks and, you know, that kind of thing. But there's so much that can go wrong. Why take the risk? You know, this is the problem. If we see that someone's gone to the effort of thinking about it and they thought everything was fine, and it was all done and it'd all be dealt with after they were no longer around. And yet, for some reason, that will doesn't do what they want it to. That's a worse scenario, I think.
It is a worse, isn't it? That's even more upsetting.
Yeah.
I think when we do actually speak to you at Simpler Law as well, there's lots of things you can put into a will that we don't even think about. But because I think instantly when you think of a will, you think of money, don't you? You think of property, you think of all those things. There's so many other things that can go into a will that are so important that I don't think people realise.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about pets. You know, people really love their pets and they care about them and they want to make sure that they're looked after. So you can give cash gifts to somebody to take on your pet or your animal, or even make donations to charity to cover the rehoming costs of that animal as well. But, you know, things that people don't think about until you say, like, what age do you want your children to inherit? You know, a lot of people wouldn't want their children to inherit at 18. So within your will, you can stipulate, well, actually 21 or 25 is a better age. Funeral wishes is a really big thing that people like to put in their will, because then it's all down there, you know. And we can write as much in that will as you want. You know, if you have specific songs that you want playing at your cremation, then that's absolutely fine. It can all go in the will. And it's quite nice for people to actually think about it, and for the people that they leave behind as well to know they've gone to the trouble of giving us all these wishes, and we can now make sure that that actually happens for them as well. It's quite a nice
Stops
thing
the
for
arguments,
people.
doesn't it? That's a selfless element. It stops the arguments. I wonder what mum would have wanted. I wonder what dad would have wanted. You know, it's documented because it's your will.
It's all here.
Yeah, and it's personal. You know, and the rules of intestacy, coming back to that, which is why Helen talked about the importance of a will. The rules of intestacy is just, there's nothing personal about it at all. It's just yes or no questions, doesn't care about you or your family, but your will, and with a professional doing it, not just a template, is going to ask you questions that you wouldn't have thought about.
Yeah.
So, and only when you're happy with the instructions you've given us, and only when you're happy with the advice that we've given you, will we actually provide you with your will. It's your will at the end of the day. So it's taking control, and honestly, you'll find it's really, really selfless, but you'll find it quite cathartic, and you'll never ever regret putting a will in place because there's nothing to regret.
No.
But your family might regret that you didn't, because honestly, the stark contrast between passing away where you've put everything in place and passing away where now there's a government will going to deal with everything that doesn't care about you or your family, the contrast is massive.
I bet that can cause a lot of family upset.
It's so upsetting, you know, and sometimes, you know, it's almost like shoot the messenger, because we'll have to speak to a family and say, yeah, you've contacted us to ask if we can help. Obviously your mum didn't have a will, so she's died intestate, so this is what's going to happen. Sometimes I go, no, she told us that she definitely didn't want a daughter to inherit because they've not had a relationship for 20 years. And it's like, now that is, so it can, an upsetting time can be made so much worse. So that's why I keep banging this drum about, you know, if you're thinking about doing it, do it, because honestly it's really, really selfless, but it's so important. And this what can seem like a minor phone call and a relatively small amount of paper is just so important because it's yours. You know, you've taken control, and being able to take yourself away from the government will, for me, is invaluable. And I don't know why, when you understand what we understand, and I think that's the frustration, is sometimes you try to get over it. It's like everything's trying to burst out of you at once. Is please don't die intestate. It's one of the worst things that can happen for your family, because your death is then made just that little bit more worse, because I guarantee that what you want to happen isn't going to happen, because the rules of intestacy doesn't care about you. But if you pass away with a will that you created, guess what? Your wishes are there. And it saves so many arguments. Things like, it's not uncommon for moms to leave jewellery to the daughters, and if they've got more than one daughter, they might specify, I want this daughter to have the wedding ring, I want this daughter to have the engagement ring. No one's going to argue about that decision. Do you know what I mean?
Because it's all there.
Yeah. So even the small things can make a massive difference at an emotional time.
So you're doing it for the family, as much for you as for the family. Yeah, so it's all in place.
And we're all quite strange, you know, because we will spend money protecting things that don't necessarily need protecting. We'll have boiler insurance, for example. We'll have house insurance, you know, we'll have contents insurance. Obviously, legally, we have to insure our cars, but we don't have to insure it fully comp, but we do. Yeah. You know, we'll even insure our phones. We'll definitely insure our pets. Yeah. And I'm not saying that a will's an insurance policy or a lasting power of attorney is an insurance policy, but these are documents that certainly a lasting power of attorney could be used. We know a will is definitely going to be used, and yet we won't find as little as £1 a day over 3 months to make sure that what we want to happen will happen. But we'll happily spend 10 times that insuring our sofa.
It's so
crazy,
true.
Isn't it, when you talk about
it is. It's so true.
So do something amazing. Don't buy the takeaway. Buy a will.
Yes, definitely.
I do think we just presume, don't we? We just presume it'll all be okay. And you won't be here, but could you imagine? And I don't know what happens when you pass, but could you imagine looking down and watching your family fall out because you didn't actually write down what you wanted to happen? So they're devastated already, so emotions are high, and now they're falling out because you know what they presumed was going to happen isn't going to happen, because it then goes to the government law, which is not at all what you think is going to happen.
Or what
for
you
us,
would want.
Yeah, for us being together, we've been together 33, 34 years. Obviously, we have a house. We've worked together all our lives. Obviously, all mine would be Sean's if I went. All of Sean's would be mine if Sean went. But that would not have been the case at all. No. And we only did our will very, very recently. Thank goodness, because that would not have been the case. And it's never too early to think about wills as well. And even if you're on your own, it doesn't matter, does it, what situation you're in? I truly believe everybody needs a will.
Like we discussed with Helen and Ian, it is everybody. Even if you're not with anyone, if you think, oh, I haven't got anything, but you have. You might have. You might just have your flat. You might just have.
It might be a family
it might just be your dog who you want to look after your dog. It's so important. And tonight isn't about having lots of information or having to know exactly what you want. It's about securing the deal and making that appointment and getting in touch. So let's talk about those deals again for you that we've got with Simpler Law, and they are experts. This is the other point.
They make it so simple. It's like talking to friends. They'll talk you through exactly what you need to know, and they'll get the information out of you. They are absolutely amazing, and I know that hand on heart from actually dealing with them with Mum's lasting power of attorney before they actually worked with us here on ShopOnTV. So first of all, you've got the will. Now I know something that we did think it would be is really expensive, and at full price.
£180, brilliant. We would have been very happy.
Very happy.
However, with £ShopOnTV, it's $89.25 the price, and then you can split that cost across 3 interest-free payments, $29.75 on your first of 3 interest-free.
I bet you spend more than that on coffee, don't you, a month?
Easily.
Because it's so little cost to know that you've given that last gift to the ones that you love, that you've got it all written down, and you have that peace of mind as well, that who you want to have things gets things. Actually, sometimes who you don't want to have things doesn't get things, because honestly the government law will not be what you want to happen to your belongings, your family heirlooms. Honestly, you must write a will. Lasting power of attorney, and we will go back to that because you may not have heard of lasting power of attorney, but this is really important as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's about having that control if you lose capacity. So put it in place now, and again, it's never too early to have lasting powers of attorney. The suggested retail price of £325 comes down to £179.25, and with those 3 interest-free payments that Simpler Law offer, it's just £59.75 on your first of 3 payments. However, the best deal of all is if you go for the combined will and lasting power of attorney.
It is. Now you might think, well, I'm not really sure at the minute. You can just go for the will, say I'd like to do the will, and then if you change your mind a bit later, Simpler Law will change that and you can do the will and lasting power of attorney. But if you're listening thinking, well, actually we definitely need both, go for this deal. Should be £505. You're actually saving more than you're spending at £249. And of course, you can split that over 3 payments of £83. Don't forget as well, what you're doing today is securing these deals, but you'll also secure this fabulous book called What My Family Should Know. Now, it's worth £25. And I know Simpler Law are always contacted about this book because everybody wants it. This book, I truly do believe everybody should have this book. It allows, if anything does happen, a loved one, a family member, to find this book and have every bit of information that they need.
And it's so many things that you wouldn't even think about.
Yeah.
Obviously, the obvious things like saving accounts, bonds, pensions, things such as that. Your funeral and your life plans in there. But then less obvious things like home security. It could be your alarm code.
Yeah.
It could be things like your vehicle registrations. But passcodes for things like your tablet and your computer,
well,
your
now,
phone.
You might be hunting for letters. Well, they're not letters anymore, are they? They'll be emails and they'll be on that tablet. And if you can't get onto that tablet, we had a family member that died and, hadn't been poorly, shouldn't have died, and they had no information. Knew everything they needed to know was on his tablet, and no one knew the password. No one could get onto his tablet, apart from, luckily, the grandson who had been playing on the tablet and knew otherwise they would never have got on. But not even important emails. That tablet in our phones are every photograph, aren't they?
Photos,
every
memories,
memory.
contacts, everything's in there. So first 250 people to secure that appointment will get one of those books included, free of charge for you. The way to get in touch is really simple and straightforward as well, and there's lots of different ways for you. You can go direct to the website at simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV. The team are in the call centre right now. They're there right through till 3 a.m.
And they are brilliant, honestly. We'll talk about the team. They are absolutely absolutely incredible. They will become friends. All you'll do tonight is just speak to them, say, I would like to secure, I want to do a will. So jump onto the phone, which is 0333 600 2600. If you've perhaps got a couple of questions, I'm sure they'll answer them tonight, but they will be busy, always really busy when we have, of course, the deals on ShopOnTV. So do just bear with them. They'll be with you as soon as they can, and then they'll get back to you later on today. So you don't need to find anything, you don't need to know anything apart from you want to do that will, you want to do that lasting power of attorney. But I think one of the best ways is to actually text.
Yeah, this is great, especially at this time of night. If you don't want to speak to anyone right now, all you've got to do is text the word will to 66777, and then the team will be in touch with you sometime later today after 11 a.m. so they won't call you first thing in the morning. You don't have to worry about that. But the team always say we've always got our phones right with us, haven't we?
Yeah.
So why not? It's about starting the process, I think.
It's so simple, isn't it? I enter all the competitions where you just have to text something. And I know it's not a competition tonight, but actually you are going to be winning straight away, because you've got that sort of that piece that you've actually done something today. You've taken that first step to make sure you give that final gift to your loved ones. You know, don't you? And however little or however much you've got, and we're not just talking about money things, your house and, you know,
sentimental things.
We're talking about your pets, what you want to happen to pets, what you want to happen to the kids. You know, it could be a family heirloom, which is perhaps it's worthless money-wise, but actually it's been in the family for decades, and you know who you want that to go to. It can all go into a will. So what you want to happen actually happens. Please do not think because you've told your daughter and son that this is what I want to do. You've got it written on a piece of paper. Legally, that is never going to happen.
No. It's got to be a legally
Even if everybody
document.
you love knows, it's not going to happen unless it's been written down legally.
And starting the process tonight with Simple Law, who are experts in the field. That's really, really important. They know exactly what you need to know, and they advise you in such a friendly manner.
Yeah, you don't actually need to know anything. You'll sit down, you'll have a really nice chat with them, and they'll get all the information out. There'll be things that you didn't even realise you could put on your will, like what sort of age your children inherit and things such as that you wouldn't have even thought about, or where you'd like, you know, who you'd like to look after your pets. There's so many things that wouldn't even enter your head that when you sit down with Simple Law and you chat, you think, oh my goodness, I would never have done that.
I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. I would have hated not sorting that out, and have that peace of mind that when and of course a will is going to be used, isn't it? And have that peace of mind that I don't know what happens, and I don't know if you look down to. I'd like to think, I always think my dad's looking down on me all the time, looking after me, and I'd like to think that. And could you imagine them looking down, or you looking down on your family, and they're falling out because you didn't write a will, and now it's going through the government will, and nobody that thought they were getting this and that and knew what you wanted with everything to happen, it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's devastating.
The great thing is the way Simple Law handle everything as well. And we talk about the call centre and your team in the call centre, and they're there now, aren't they, your team, ready to take those calls? Yeah,
we're amazed how many people volunteer to do this show. I think it's because they can turn up dressed down, and we might put on a bit of food for them as well. So, you know, I can't say it's all about the client. But, no, the client care team are great because, you know, as we keep saying, we're specialists in this field, and the consultants, this is all they do. This is their job. So day in, day out, day in, day out, they are actually, you're going to have to take this.
So they're there right now. They're there through till 3 a.m, but they're there to talk you through everything as well, aren't they?
Yeah, as Ian was saying, they do this day in, day out. So they're used to speaking to clients. They're used to coming across different scenarios. They get a lot of self-satisfaction out of doing the very best for our clients, and that's what it's all about. It's all about the people that contact us, and that's why we do this job. You know, we want to help people. We want to give people that peace of mind. We want to make sure that whatever their circumstances, the documents that we produce do the very best for what they want to happen.
Yeah.
And the client care team are brilliant at achieving that. So someone can ring up and say, this is what I want to achieve, and and they say, right, this is how we do it.
Great.
And they will ask lots of questions, they will ask for all sorts of information, and that's so that they make sure that you're getting all the correct advice. So they'll ask about kind of what assets you own, because we always look at property ownership as well, because there's different ways of owning property, and depending on your estate planning, depending on your circumstances, we want to make sure that you own your property in the correct way. So they will do all of this, things that you will never even think about, but the client care team do it day in, day out. So I'd be very surprised if there's a scenario that they haven't come across before, but we're always open to a challenge. So if someone's watching and wants to give us a call and say, I bet you've never heard of this before, absolutely fine. But the client care team can really work with you and make sure you're not.
It's a hand-holding
Yeah,
process.
they become friends, really.
Yeah, sorry, Sean. I think that
Amazing.
can be one of the reasons that clients actually put off making a will, because they think their situation is going to be complicated, or they
Right.
think the phone call or the consultation is going to go on forever, and that it's going to be really difficult, or perhaps it's going to be wearing on them. And I promise you, it just isn't that.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's pleasantly surprised at the end of it. And Helen's right, we do ask a lot of information from you because it's important that we get it right. We have to know our client to give best advice. But at the same time, we're not asking you anything that you won't know the answer to.
No.
You know, I've said before that we actually have all the questions because we're the experts in this field and know what to ask, which will get you thinking about things you wouldn't have thought about yourself. But I promise you, you've got all the answers, because at the end of the day, it's your will that we're drafting. So we'll ask you all those questions, we'll hold your hand through the process, but at the end of it, you'll get the will that's right for you and right for your family and your loved ones. If you don't do that, you're left with one set of rules that doesn't care about you. So, as I said, the contrast is massive. So do something amazing. The team are there now, as we said. 4033 600 2600. Make someone take a slice of pizza out of the mouth. But in all seriousness, they're there to take your call now.
Yeah.
Yes, it'll be busy because these shows always are, thankfully. But they'll be able to take. If you've got a few questions, they'll be able to answer your questions. But secure the deal.
Yeah.
Actually set the ball rolling,
Yeah.
because you won't regret that you did.
Sometimes it takes us forever to take that first step, doesn't it? And we put it off, and then all of a sudden, I said earlier, it's summer holidays, the kids are off
Yeah.
school, and then they'll be back at school, and then all of a sudden it'll be Christmas, and you think, oh, we still haven't done that will.
Yeah.
We still haven't done that will. That might be too late, awfully, because you just don't know what is round the corner. Do it now, and honestly, it's the biggest lift off your shoulders when you've done it, and they do become friends. Have a look on Trustpilot. The 5-star reviews are incredible, and they're all very, on a whole, personal.
They're all about the people you deal with.
That they spoke to,
Yeah,
the people
the
that helped
people's
them.
names.
You know, it will be I think one of the best things you do is to write a will, because you know you've given that very last gift to your loved ones. What you wanted to happen is actually going to happen.
And I think the other thing to point out right now is that if people are getting in touch, they don't need to have anything, do
Absolutely.
they?
No. Tonight is really, or this morning is really just about taking that first step. You might not have the first idea about. You might even think, well, I'm not quite sure what
I've got.
That's fine. We'll go at a pace that suits you, and we'll
Yeah.
help you come to that conclusion. Because again, can't stress this enough. It's your will. We're not telling you what to do. You're telling us, and we do it in the best way we can. But more importantly, make it so that it's legally binding and is going to work. So this morning, you don't need to know anything other than I'm going to do something amazing for myself and my family. That's all you're doing at this point. And we'll hold your hand through the rest of it without being patronising. We'll take you through the process. You know, and some people it'll be over in 20, 30 minutes and job done, great.
Yeah.
Other people we might have to call back a few times because it might be a little bit more complex, or maybe they do have to think about things. That's fine. We'll go at a pace that suits you. But you can be assured that at the end of it, you get a document that's right for you and your family, and that's the important thing. So please don't put it off because you're not sure, or don't put it off because you think it's going to be complicated. Don't put it off because you think it's going to be more, because I assure you it's going to be none of those things. But the only way to prove that is to speak to a member of the client care team and just see how good they are. See why people like Jack and Charlotte and Gemma get these great reviews, because they care and it's their job. And you know, and they love their job, truthfully, because every time they speak to a client, it's a new scenario again. And they also know that what they're doing for them is going to be amazing, because it's definitely going to be used. And we know what a huge difference it is seeing someone that's passed away with a will compared to seeing someone that's passed away without a will. Both bereavements are equally devastating, you know, and grief plays a part clearly. But the person that passed away with a will hasn't made that situation worse for the family. The person that passed away without a will, it can literally be catastrophic. You know, and it sounds melodramatic, but sometimes passing away without a will can tear your family apart, figuratively and metaphorically. It's
What does happen if you haven't got a will then? If, you know, that your father, your mother, your sister, your partner have died, what then happens? You know what they wanted, but what actually happens?
So there's a demarcation line. You're either on one side of it or the other. Which side of the line you're on? You're either on the side of the line where you've made a will, so you've taken advantage of an offer like we're offering this morning, or you haven't made your own will, which means that you're said to have died intestate, which means you get given the government will. And the government will is basically a set of rules called the Rules of Intestacy that were put into legislation in 1925. So they don't really reflect today's society. 1925, it wouldn't have been unusual to see Mr. and Mrs. Smith with 2 children together, and it tried to basically make provision for that situation. Today, we're not going to be shocked or surprised if we're dealing with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but they might be on their second marriage. They might have children from a previous relationship each, and they might have a child together. I promise you, the Rules of Intestacy literally cannot cope with that family dynamic and tears it apart. Because it's all about your marital status, and then it's about your bloodline, and there's zero personal stuff in there at all. It doesn't care about you. For all intents and purposes, you're just an account number. It understands, it's there, beg your pardon, understandably, because there has to be a default position. There has to be something, otherwise it'd be anarchy.
But it can't be right that we all have the same will.
And unfortunately, that's exactly what it is. So millions of people in the UK have basically the rules of it, have the government will, which is just this default position to just distribute your asset and close your account down. But there's nothing personal in there. It doesn't care about your children if you've got them. It doesn't care about grandchildren. It doesn't care about gifts. It doesn't care about who you would or wouldn't want to inherit. And it certainly doesn't care about the person or the people that you would want to actually deal with your estate when you're not here. There is no control given to the Rules of Intestacy. And that's why we do these shows. We want people to really understand that if you passed away yesterday and you haven't made a will, then your family have no say, and you've had no say in what happens. A set of rules that's almost 100 years old is going to determine that. But if you decide to make your own will, and there's a reason we do these exclusive offers on this show, it's less than £1 a day for 3 months. You know, we're trying to make it affordable, but if you make your own will, then you control what happens. That's why it's so selfless, and that's why it's so important. Because I promise you, one thing I will guarantee is you and your family, they don't want you to die intestate.
No.
You make a will, you've done something amazing, not just for yourself, but for the people that you're leaving behind. So please, if you're thinking about doing it, stop the thinking part, just send us that text or speak to the client care team now. They're happy to take your call this morning.
It is so easy to get in touch, and of course what you're doing tonight or this morning is you're securing the deals. You're securing the deals. The prices are incredible.
The prices, well, the price was one of the things that sort of put us off, because
we thought it'd be really expensive.
Yeah, and even for the will itself, if it was £180, it'd be brilliant. It's so much less than that. £89.25 if you want to secure the deal to write yourself a will. Just to secure that deal and start the process. This is what it's all about. £29.75 on your first of 3 interest-free payments. Simple Law are going to even offer you the opportunity to spread the cost of that payment if you want to write yourself a will. Next up, the lasting power of attorney, and we're going to go back to that in a moment. So more in depth and detail about lasting powers of attorney for you in a moment. The suggested retail price on that is £325. The ShopOnTV price today is £179.25, and with those 3 payments again, splitting the cost interest-free, £59.75.
And when you're splitting that cost, it just makes it so affordable, doesn't it? I bet you spend more than, you know, £29.75 on coffee in a month. I bet you have spend more on takeaways than £59.75 over those 3 payments for the lasting power of attorney. But actually, you can combine the 2, which is an even bigger saving. And if you do change your mind, you might do the will right now, and then when you talk to the team, think, well, actually, I'd like to do the will and LPA. I watched a bit more of the show, and I'd like to do the 2. They will, of course, alter that for you. But what you have got is such such a good deal. You're actually saving more than you're spending there. Should be £505. It goes down to £249. But again, splitting that over those 3 payments, £83 is the first of those 3 payments. What you're doing tonight, you don't need to know any answers to any questions. All you need to know is you want to write a will, you want lasting power of attorney, and you're securing these prices. And of course, you're also securing this fabulous book. The first 250 clients will get What My Family Should Know book, which we'll go into a bit of detail of that.
Yeah.
And that's worth £25. To get in touch, let's give you all the details. It's really, really easy to do. What I would say is just take a quick photo of this so you've got it on your phone, but I would do it straight away as well, because tonight you're securing those prices. So simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV is one way to get in touch. The team are on the phone lines and they are absolutely fantastic. They will be busy, but they will get to you as quickly as they can. So if you want to jump onto the phone, 0333 600 2600. And then you have got text. Now this is really popular.
This is the easiest way to get in touch. If you don't want to speak to anyone tonight, you can just text the word will to 66777. I'm sure your phone's right there with you. Just start that ball rolling. Text the word will to 66777 and the team will be in touch with you after 11 o'clock this morning and throughout the day.
Sometimes you just need that little push, don't you? You know you need to get this sorted. You know you need to write a will. Yeah, and we put it off. The kids are on holiday now. You'll go on holiday. They'll go back to school. Then it'll be Christmas, and I bet you still won't have written your will. And you'll think, oh God, I'll do it next year.
I should have done that.
Yeah.
I should have done that. I should have started that
it will
process.
get to a point where it is too late,
Yeah.
and all those things that we're talking about, all the things that can go so horribly wrong, can happen because you didn't take that first step today just to get that will written down and that last gift to your loved ones. Remember, if you think, I'm not quite sure where I need to go, you can always go onto our website as well. So if you normally shop with us, shopontv.co.uk, you'll find that you'll see Simpler Law right there in the middle. And if you click onto that, it'll take you through to Simpler
it'll
Law.
show you the offers. You just scroll down and this is another way to get in touch. You just fill in some very basic details,
Even
your
I can answer
contact
these
information, your name, your email, which offer you want, a couple of other questions, and the team once again will get in touch with you. Now, we did mention the first 250 people who secure their appointment will get this book. Now, Ian, I think this is pretty much invaluable. It's for the first 250 people, they'll get this, won't they? And it's all that information that you look for, that you need.
Yeah, it lets you take stock of what you've got and again, ask questions that perhaps you wouldn't have thought about for yourself. Like we keep talking about passwords for our digital devices and things like that, because there's so much more going on in our lives that isn't readily found now.
Yes.
This was actually born out of what our estate administration department has to do. So when you make your own will, you can choose the executors. So those are the people that administer your estate. And their job is basically to gather everything together that you had. And this helps with that. The interesting statistics that come out of actually putting this book together is it was discovered that there's £5 billion in the UK in unclaimed pension pots because those frozen pensions were never found when someone's passed away.
It's just sat there.
Yeah,
and someone could really need that.
It should be with your loved ones, but of course, if you don't know where to look, or you didn't know that your granddad or your dad had a job with this company for 5 years, how could you possibly know? So this just allows you to take stock. So yeah, so they think there's £5 billion of unclaimed pension pots, £2 billion of unclaimed life insurance policies, and there's £850 million sat in UK bank accounts where that account hasn't been found. And understandably and truthfully, you know, we know that people that are holding on to that money aren't going to be rushing around trying to give it away.
No.
It's up to the executor to find it and actually bring it in as part of the estate. So it's, again, this is all about, you know, providing a professional service. So we help you with all of that. So we're not just here for encouraging you to do a will now, but we're here with things like offering you that book for free. You can change your will in the future if you need to change it. And of course, we're also there for you and your family at the point of need as well. So the bereavement service isn't really an emotional thing, it's a practical thing. You know, we've had clients for decades and decades. We remember doing the will, remember changing it. And sadly, you know, there is a time, there's an inevitability to making a will. There's a time where then we're administering that will. And whilst the bereavement is obviously, you know, awful and sad, there's sort of a nice thing that they've got a will
What they
and
want.
what they
We've
want to
taken
happen.
care of that client through their whole life, and now we're dealing with their family as well.
And at the end of it, you know, we've not made the bereavement any easier because, you know, they've still lost a loved one. But what has happened has been this smooth transition. Their last gift has distributed their assets to the people they wanted to, how they wanted it to be done, and there's been no arguments, and it's done what it's supposed to do. And unfortunately, the stark contrast to that, the sliding doors, if you like, of not making a will, is on the other side of that, dying intestate and getting a government will. Doesn't care about you and never ever does what our clients want.
No.
So again, I'll just say to you, if you really want to take care of your loved ones, of the people that matter the most to you, and whether you think you've got a lot or a little is irrelevant, your last act on planet Earth, make it your last act, not the government's. And without being political, it doesn't matter which government's in power.
No.
These rules of intestacy have been there since 1925.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the world has changed
So
much
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Back then, people stayed on a whole married for
The whole
ever,
life,
didn't they?
yeah.
And
Yeah, they
possibly
did.
just had 2 children, whereas now we remarry with, you know, we could have
Truthfully,
children
they've
from
made
different
attempts out.
families.
They've tried to change it, but it's just too complex. It becomes.
suppose it is, yeah.
Which
There
is
was
why
a
they.
huge,
Go on.
sorry, there was a huge consultation on cohabiting couples and whether that could be written in, and you know whether they could be included. But when they actually drilled down into it, it was like, how do you define cohabitation? Is it for a fixed
Period of time.
Yeah.
Do they have to be there so many nights a week? You know, when you start trying to define it, and in the end they just went, no, this is
Just leave
too
it as it is.
difficult. We'll just
Yeah.
we'll just leave it as it is.
The only
But-
thing that's really changed in 100 years is some, numbers. Is basically the amount that passes between spouses, for example.
Okay.
That's moved with the times a little bit.
And recognising civil partnerships
Yeah.
as well. That's
Right.
now included within there as
These
well.
are these are small things for all intents and purposes, the same as it was 100 years ago. When you're quite
crazy.
right,
Life was so different.
By 1925, what were the chances of you seeing a married couple that might have been on the 2nd or 3rd marriage with children from previous relationships? That would have just been unheard of. You know, you'd been a social outcast if you were like that. Whereas today, of course, there's nothing. Half of the families in the UK are blended families now.
Of course they are.
So, and if those people haven't made a will because they think or hope that everything's going to be okay, sadly, it's those families that suffer
They'll
the
be
worst.
affected,
It's
yeah.
awful. And it can be so easily fixed.
Explain again just quickly, if you would, if you have got a blended family, so someone has remarried, they've got children from different partners, but yet they live together, the kids all live together, they see themselves as brothers and sisters, you know, they're all...
Totally understandable, yeah.
What happens if they haven't written a will?
And they're not
what
married.
actually happens?
Well, I saw a client a couple of years ago that was referred to me, because I still see clients, much to their dismay. And I introduced this, without being patronising, I introduced the finger puppets because it was his wife that had been recommended, I'd been recommended, and he wasn't really interested because he was, again, he'd gone to the assumption place, and I'm sure a friend had told him, well, you're a family, you've been a family for 20 years, the girls aren't stepsisters, the sisters, and they saw themselves as a complete family unit, absolutely fine, and as did I when I met them. But the law doesn't. So when I saw them, I literally had to say to him, I said, look, forgive the finger puppets. I said, but this is you and this is your wife. I said, now, depending who passes away first is going to depend which of your daughters inherits. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you passed away yesterday and their estate was worth about 250,000, I said, everything that you own will pass to your wife. He said, yeah, that's what I want to happen. I said, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I said, then when your wife passes away, it'll just go to her daughter and your daughter won't get a penny. And he said, no, that's not right. And I said, well, that might not be what you want to happen, but I assure you that is what's going to happen under the rules of intestacy. And there was almost like a cold sweat. And then it was like, well, how quickly can we fix that? Because the realisation was, so this is what's going to happen if we don't get something in place. And it's as simple as that. That's what I mean about the rules of intestacy. It doesn't care about even the slightest wrinkle in a family situation. So the finger puppets, without being patronising, helped him visualise everything passed to his wife, but then all he went. And I said, likewise, if your wife passes away first, it all comes to you, then your daughter inherits. But you've made it quite clear that you want to take care of each other after one of you has passed away, but then the girls are to benefit equally. Well, the way to do that is let's draft a will. So, you know, within half an hour, we'd fixed everything. It was that straightforward for that
But
family.
until they have that conversation,
Yeah.
people don't realise.
It's the presumption, that's what we said, the
but
misconception.
that's why we do these shows, because we want to spread the word and get the education out there so people understand what kind of decision they're making when they're writing a will or choosing not to.
And how affordable it is to just make everything so much easier.
So easy, it's not complicated, it's so affordable tonight. Secure those deals. They're all there for you. You've got the will, you've got the lasting power of attorney, and you've got the will and lasting power of attorney. Now, you might not have heard of lasting power of attorney. We are going to go into more detail again with that. If you're going for the will, should be £180. £89.25 is your price with us tonight. You do need to secure that deal, as soon as you can, and then you can split that cost as well with 3 payments of £29.75. Lasting power of attorney, again, you've got a great saving on this.
Huge saving. £325 on your suggested retail price, down to £179.25, or £59.75 on your first of 3 payments with those interest-free options that Simpler Law are offering. The best offer of all, where you save the most money, is if you go for a will and an LPA. £505 is the combined price, down to £249, and then it's £83 on your first of 3 interest-free payments if you choose to spread the cost. Really simple to get in touch. Remember, first 250 people who make that appointment will also receive that book that we talked about a few moments ago. But if you want to get in touch, you can get in touch by the website, simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV. You can call the call centre right up till 3 a.m.
They're waiting for you. They're an amazing team. If you've got any questions, you can ask a couple of questions tonight, but it's not about questions tonight. It's just about you securing that deal. They'll get back to you later on today. They know you've been up late with us, so jump onto the phone 0333 600 2600. Do have a look at Trustpilot. It'll give you an idea and peace of mind just how fabulous those people will be on the phones. But if perhaps for your job you've been talking all day, the last thing you want to do is talk to somebody else right now, you can just text the word will. And that is so simple. I love these situations. It's done. You send it to 66777. That is the job done. I do all the competitions like that. If they say just text, I'm like, oh, I'll enter that. That's right. And you're not entering a competition tonight, but actually you will be the winner tonight because you will have taken that first step to make sure what you want to happen with what you've worked so hard for, who you want it to go to, even if it's just a family heirloom, a ring, whether it's your pet, you know what you want to happen is going to happen. Because please do not presume you know what's going to happen to your belongings, your property. It isn't what happens if you haven't got it written down in a will.
Yeah, in a legally binding document, and that's what Simpler Law specialise in. Now, we've talked about wills. We're going to go back to lasting power of attorney. We just talked about the offers there. When it comes to lasting power of attorney, Helen, we talked about misconceptions with wills. There's probably misconceptions with LPAs, or people might not have even heard of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So a power of attorney document is a document that gives somebody else the authority to step into your shoes if you're ever in a position where you can't make decisions for yourself.
Right.
And I think there's an assumption that, particularly between married couples, that if one of you was ill, that the other one would automatically be able to take over and deal with everything.
Yeah.
And sadly, that's not the case. We've all got experience of speaking to financial institutions or utility providers, and the first question they ask you is, are you the account holder? And as soon as you say, no, I'm not, but I just need to do this, or I'm not, but they're ill and they can't speak to you, they won't talk to you.
Can't help you.
Quite rightly, you've got no authority to act. And the power of attorney obviously can give somebody that authority. But these misconceptions are very similar to wills, where people have conversations and they just presume that everything will be okay. That, if I was ill, surely someone would be able to act on my behalf, because that's the normal thing that would happen. But legally, if you're ill and you lose capacity to make decisions for yourself, you then become a vulnerable person, and quite rightly there's legislation in place that then protects you so that you're not taken advantage of by anyone who's not acting in your best interests. But that does make it very difficult for the people who genuinely want to help you.
So if, because like you're saying, if it was my mum, I look after my mum, I would presume, obviously everybody knows that I've got my mum's best interests. Yeah. Surely I can make sure her bills are paid, et cetera, et cetera. But I wouldn't be able to,
You'd not be able to access her finances.
What could I do then if my mum couldn't do it for herself, but I needed to help her?
So if she hadn't made a lasting power of attorney, the route that you have to go down is through the Court of Protection, and you have to make an application for something called a deputyship order, and that's the court order that gives you that authority in the same way as a lasting power of attorney would. The difference is because that person hasn't chosen you, so your mum hasn't done a document that says, I want you to act, you have to make a court application to prove that you're a worthy person to be able to look after her finances. Now, this court application is quite an expensive process. So you've got an application fee of £408 to start with. What then happens is that you have to undergo an assessment to make sure that you're a worthy person to deal with the finances. The court may then say, well, actually, we want a court hearing. We want you to come in. We want to be able to ask you questions about this. And then there's an additional cost to that, £494. And then there's an annual supervision fee for a deputy as well, which can be up to £320. So the costs just continue to rack up. But I think the worst thing about this whole process is, unlike a power of attorney where if the power of attorney is in place, it needs to be registered with the Office of the Public Guardian for it to be used. They charge a small registration fee to do that, but it's done then, and then the document can be used.
Yeah.
With the Court of Protection application process, you're looking at probably 9 months to a year before you can get that order.
Oh my goodness.
And it says on the bottom of the screen there about professional advice, because you probably won't understand
do that on your own. That doesn't cover any, that's literally the court costs. That's nothing to do with the professional advice. So it can become a really expensive, and if you think you can't access that person's finances at that time, so you're having to self-fund this to be able to do that.
And then, like you were saying about the time it can take.
Yeah,
you might have lost that loved one by the time it's actually been sorted out.
And it's really, we've got a Court of Protection team who deal with these applications day in and day out, quite sadly. And speaking to the people who find themselves in that situation, they're so desperately trying to help their loved one, and maybe even come to terms, like if it was sudden, if someone's had a sudden stroke or something like that, they're trying to come to terms with that and spend their time caring for that person. They haven't got time to go through a court process and fill in all these lengthy forms.
Or get it right
like that
as well.
No.
So then they're paying for the professional advice to do that on top of the fees that are covered. And you're quite right, in a year's time, is that going to be too late? You know, it's a horrible process, and it can so easily be avoided.
And it is so easy
by getting a power of attorney.
I did Mum's lasting power of attorney with Simpler Law before Simpler Law was actually working with us here on ShopOnTV, and it was so incredibly easy. Me and Mum are the worst for worrying and thinking we're going to get things wrong. We're not going to know what to say. It was a sit down, a really easy conversation, and we came originally to do sort of the financial lasting power of attorney, but there are two which you explained, and we decided in the end both were just as important as the other. Can you explain what the difference is between the two?
I mean, the important thing with both of them is to get them in place while you've got capacity. That's the only time you can do this. So anyone who keeps thinking, well, I'll get round to it, it'll never happen to me, make sure you do it now while you've got capacity to do so. Otherwise, you could leave it to the Court of Protection process. So the two types of lasting power of attorney, you're quite right, there's the property and financial affairs, which I think, like you, most people have heard of, and they kind of understand that, because that's all about dealing with bank accounts and utilities and savings and investments and all that kind of thing, even kind of dealing with your tax affairs with HMRC, maybe even selling property, buying more appropriate property for somebody who's lost capacity, that kind of thing. So I think most people can kind of understand that. And you're right, most people contact us and say, I've heard about this one, this is the one I want to do. But when we talk to them about the health and welfare power of attorney, this is actually kind of more to do with someone's welfare and decisions that affect them personally.
It's very personal, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's about their kind of medical care and medical treatment, even down to things like where you live, what social activities you take part in, even things like what clothes you wear and what food you eat. In the health and welfare power of attorney, there's a question on life-sustaining treatment. So this gives somebody the authority to make decisions on really important things like that. So once we talk to people about the health and welfare power of attorney, they're like, oh, hang on, I think I need both of these. And with the court of protection process, actually, to apply to the court of protection on a financial decision is quite straightforward. Even though it takes a year, it's quite straightforward. If you have to apply to the court of protection on a health and welfare decision, then there's a lot more to it. They're more likely to need a hearing. They're more likely to say, well, we want to take one decision at a time. So actually it becomes really difficult.
Don't really like it, do they, truthfully?
They don't. No, actually,
too subjective.
people see the real benefit in getting the health and welfare power of attorney in place as well.
It's so important, isn't it? And I think it's so important that you have it in place.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have it in place,
Yeah, exactly. And
that's
and
where it all goes wrong, isn't it?
You know, it is getting it in place now while you've got capacity to do so. We don't like to think of anything happening to us and for us to not be able to make decisions for ourselves. But we see it every day in the news and all these awful things that happen. We don't know what's around the corner. And I know the thing is, it's normally down to the family to deal with. And I know there'll be people watching this show who'll be thinking, what about my mum and dad? Because if anything happens to them, I'm going to be the one that's going to have to deal with that. And I would say, get them to get in touch with us and get their powers of attorney in place, because it will be down to you to deal with it.
Am I right in thinking I remember a newspaper article when a lady wanted to bring her mum out of a home for Christmas, and she bought, and she got into real trouble, didn't she? Because she took her out.
Yeah, she didn't have the. Again, rational people think, well, like you thought about your own mum. Well, everyone knows that I care for my mum and that I'm the right person to do that. But without the legal authority, if you think about it logically, you've got no right over what you say happens to your mum. Even though you feel like you should. You've
Not legally, no.
Yeah, your mum has to say, I want my daughter to make these decisions if I can't make them for myself. So there's plenty of daughters, and there was one, I think it was either last year or the Christmas before that, where she'd actually just took it upon herself to take her mum out of a care home just for a couple of days. I think she was a nurse, but of course she was caught up with by the police in the Sainsbury's car park.
Yeah.
You know, all that kind of thing is avoidable, you know, with the right documentation in place. It's about having authority. You know, again, I think we spend a lot of money on things that we think are important to protect and forget about ourselves and our family.
Yeah.
Now, let me be clear, a lasting power of attorney is not an insurance policy, but it can certainly be thought of in a similar sort of way. These are documents that you want to have and then hope that your family never need to use them.
Yes.
Because that means you've kept your health, you've maintained your capacity. So it was nice to have them, and thank goodness my family never needed them. But if life did throw you that curveball, my goodness, will your family be grateful that you did that? Again, it's quite selfless. It's a little bit more than selfless this time, though, because you know that if life does throw you that curveball, the people that you would want stepping into your shoes are the people you've chosen.
It's not out of your hand.
No, if you lose capacity, for all intents and purposes, anyone could turn up to the court of protection. It might be someone that you want to have nothing to do with you, but the courts have got no way of knowing that, which is why they have the hearings, which is why it takes so long. So again, it's really, really important that you take control of this and you decide who's actually going to act as your attorneys if ever you need them. So, you know, I'm not saying don't insure your boiler and don't insure your pets and don't insure your house, but think about looking after yourself a little bit as well, because this will be a really, really serious investment, and it's very much planning for the worst but hoping for the best. My wife and I have had these documents for years and years and years. We've not registered with the Office of the Public Guardian yet. They've been validated by our company, so we know they're good to go in inverted commas, but we know they're there if life throws either of us a curveball. So that's the peace of mind that we know. So if anything did happen to us, our attorneys know where they are and we're covered, for want of a better description. The worst that can happen is, unfortunately, you're caught out and you lose capacity. And then Helen already made this point, you're trying to care for that loved one. But whilst you're trying to care for that loved one, you've also got to deal with this court process.
That's it, you're already trying to cope with a really terrible situation, and then you've got all this to try and sort.
To deal with.
And when again, we deal with all kinds of people. This again is a bespoke thing. You know, people have different ideas, and married couples, I understand married couples or partners like yourself that have been together 33, 34 years because you're not quite sure.
We're not.
But couples that have got a life together, I kind of understand why they might think that they automatically, but I assure you that's not the case. And if you ask yourself, you know, if you think about it for a second as well, there's probably one of you that deals with the finances more than the other. That's not unusual. You know, one takes more responsibility than the other. And if you think if it's that person that's sadly incapacitated, The other person that doesn't ordinarily deal with the finances anyway, for argument's sake, is now dealing with this awful thing that's happened to their loved one. They're not quite sure where to start, but even worse than that, they also haven't even got the authority to start because that document isn't there. So this awful situation can be made so much worse. So again, the reason we do these shows isn't to doom and gloom, it's just say, look, really think about this document, because if you've got this in place, Murphy's Law, hopefully you'll never need to use it. We know a will is going to be used, but you want to have a lasting power of attorney and then just hope that actually my family's never going to need to use that. But goodness me, if life did throw you that curveball, your family, your loved ones would be, happy is the wrong word, but they'd be pleased that you took the time out that it's there. Yeah, because it makes a bad situation just that little bit better. But a bad situation can be made so much worse. No one wants to go through the court protection. It's absolutely horrific.
It was a bad situation that made Mum say, you know, we've got to get this done. And you might be watching right now thinking, you know, Mum, Dad, they really should have this done. Or you might be, Mum and Dad, right now thinking that we really need to do this. But actually, you don't have to be Mum, Dad. You don't have to be, or you shouldn't be actually sort of in later life. You should be thinking about doing that right now, because we just don't know what's around the corner, do we?
And the other thing to say is that if people do want to, again, start the ball rolling, they don't need anything. They don't need to have anything ready, do they?
They might, on something like a lasting power of attorney, they might not even be sure, you know, exactly who they want for their attorneys to be.
Right.
But if you know that you don't want to give them an extra burden, the thing to do is make that all-important first step.
The contact.
And then our client care team will hold your hand through that, and you can talk it through with someone who actually isn't emotionally connected to you. We've got your best interests at heart. But you can, you know, sometimes we have clients who go, well, I really want to name my son, and then they're brutally honest and said, but he's not very good with his own money, and I'm not sure I trust him. And you're like,
oh, bless.
Okay, well, let's have a look at what the other options are. But those are the kind of conversations that come up, you know. And who's to say that wouldn't be the son that actually goes to the court of protection to try and control your finances? But in all seriousness, it's a document that's right for you. But you're quite right. The point you were making is you don't need to know anything specific tonight other than, do you know what, a will sounds like a really good idea. A lasting power of attorney sounds like a really good idea. I'm going to at the very least set that ball rolling. Yeah. Because again, no one ever regrets putting these documents in place, but certainly your family could regret that you haven't got them.
It was like a lift, you know, a weight off Mum's shoulders when we did it.
It was.
And it was, and she's a real worrier. So to actually start doing it and get it done was a big worry. But then it was just so easy to sit down with the team at Simple Law. I mean, they were great, weren't they? Yeah. And it was just a sort of a three-way conversation. Really, really simple. We didn't need to know anything. They really sort of spoke to us and got all the information they needed from just chatting whilst we were having a cup of tea. It was brilliant, and it was completely.
Sorry, Haley, the strange thing, because you mentioned worry there, is people do worry that it's going to be difficult or complicated. But the really strange thing, it's almost ironic, is there's far more to worry about losing capacity without a lasting power of attorney, and far more to worry about dying without a will. You know, so don't worry about making these documents. We'll make it really, really straightforward and as easy as possible for you, because that's what we do day in, day out. Because I assure you there's far more to worry about not having these documents in place than worrying about doing them.
And you made it so simple. Shoulders, that relief once you've done it. And because the team do put you at such ease. Lots of ways to get in touch. Great offers, as we said, whatever you're going for, whether you're going for lasting power of attorney or wills. So if you want to go straight to the website, simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV. The contact centre is open right now.
They're there till 3 a.m. So do jump onto the phones. They are amazing.
And you don't need anything. This is. I always think, oh well, what will I need? What will they ask me for? It's just about securing the offer tonight, isn't it?
Well, you sometimes worry about making phone calls.
I do. I'm not very good at phone calls.
Honestly, it's just they're brilliant on the phone, and you'll just dial 0333 600 2600. A great member will answer the phone, and you'll just say, they'll say, you know, what are you calling about? And you say, well, I want to secure the deal on the will, please, and I would like that book because there's 250 of those books, so I want to secure the book as well. And that'll be, that's fine. And then, of course, they will then get back in touch with you. I was going to say tomorrow, but it'll be later on today to sort out the right time and to give you an idea of what you might need then. These are all your prices. Remember, you can text as well. And if you want to text, the number is 6777, and it is just texting the word will. and then someone again will get back to you later on today. The text is always really popular, and the prices. I thought all of this would be really expensive, but actually at full price, you think, well, actually, that was money well
Great
spent.
value, yeah.
But look at your discounts if you're securing those deals
So
today.
the will, first of all, if you want to start the ball rolling, and if you do change your mind and you want the will and the LPA, or you want to change and just get the LPA, it's fine. You're just securing that first deal. So the will itself is down to $89.25. If you want to spread the cost, you've got that option. $29.75 on your first of 3 payments there for the family estate and will.
I say it loads of times, but just think what you spend a month, sort of about £30. What do you spend on coffee? About clothes? I mean, I
Probably
bet,
a week that on coffee.
So
Like the meal deals, the lunches that you
that's
have.
it.
When you're at
That
work.
money is so easily gone out of your pocket.
My wife
whereas
tells me that a parcel of the day keeps the sadness away, apparently.
So honestly, what's he like? So honestly, it's money so well spent, and it's money that I don't think you'll miss those 3 payments because you will spend that elsewhere. Don't have a few coffees. Make sure you're making sure you're looking after your loved ones when you've gone, and that's exactly what you do with a will. It can stop so many upsets, family upsets. Then you've got the lasting power of attorney, which of course we have given you the details of that. The lasting power of attorney, £325 is the price that it should be, £179.25, which again you can split over 3 payments. So actually £59.75 is the first of those 3 payments. And then you have got will and lasting power of attorney, which is a massive saving as well.
Yeah, it should be £505 down to £249 on our price here at ShopOnTV, but down to £83 if you want to spread the cost interest-free on your first of 3 payments. That's the will and lasting power of attorney. Obviously, if you do want to add in both lasting power of attorneys, all these options are there for you when you speak to the team.
Yeah, you might change your mind. You might do just will now and then think, well, actually, that lasting power of attorney, you know, perhaps you'll discuss it tomorrow. I'd like to do that as well. So you can do and you know, change when you speak to the team. Just make sure you secure the deals right now and secure that book as well, which is absolutely brilliant, which you'll put all your information in, so really easy for everyone to find everything. Please don't presume what you think is going to happen because you do need wills, you do need lasting powers of attorney, and you do need someone professional to put it all together for you.
I think that's really important. So if we go right back to the beginning, Ian, if you explain to everyone at home, if anyone's just joined us, who are Simpler Law? You are experts in the field, aren't you?
We are, and only in this field. This is what we specialise in. So, you know, wills is at the heart of what we do, but this is the only area of law that we specialise in. So you wouldn't come to us for things like a divorce or a boundary dispute or a personal injury claim. But if you want to take care of your family, you want to make sure that everything you've worked hard for goes where you want it to go, estate planning is what we do. So because we don't basically dabble in anything else, you're pretty much guaranteed that the advice that you're going to get is top notch, which is why we also carry £5 million worth of professional indemnity insurance as well. We're that confident in the advice and the recommendations that we make and the services that we provide that it's fully insured as well. You know, so again, it's really important that something so important is done professionally and done well, because it can be very easy to mess up if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the reason we do these shows. We want to get a lot of information out there that isn't necessarily readily available. We certainly want to, you know, bust some of the myths and misconceptions. And hopefully if we've done that, you know, you'll speak to the client care team this morning, or you'll send us a text and we'll definitely call you back. But then you'll get to speak to one of the client care team members and you'll see just how good we are. And I keep saying this a lot, but you won't regret trusting a specialist like us, because I promise that what you get at the end of it far outweighs what you get if you don't do it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't got a will,
Yeah.
what we didn't realise, because we presumed we've been together 33, 34 years, I will work it out one time.
It's longer than a life sentence, though, you know.
A long time. And I presumed what was mine would be Sean's, what was Sean's would be mine. You know, our families would know that. We've been together, lived together, worked together forever. But that wouldn't have happened if one of us had passed, you know, completely not. We couldn't get our heads around that
That's one of the
at all.
biggest misconceptions, I think. The fact that you've
is.
lived together such a long time. We talked about it, didn't we? common law isn't actually a thing.
It's not. There is no such thing as a common law spouse. It doesn't exist in legal relationships.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's lots of other kind of misconceptions as well. One thing that does come up as part of your will and estate planning is thinking about inheritance tax. And people think, well, actually, inheritance tax is just going to apply to my estate if I've got those kind of assets and there's nothing I can do about it. But actually, there are certain allowances that can apply to your estate as long as you structure your estate planning properly. So there's a residence nil rate band, which means if you own a property and you pass it on to qualifying beneficiaries who have to be direct descendants, you get additional tax allowances. And it all sounds very complicated and nobody's expected to understand that. But just by having a conversation with us, you might find that actually we can structure your estate planning in such a way to make sure we're maximising all these allowances that are available, and that can
Lots
be really
of people
important.
won't know that.
No, they won't.
Why would you?
Kind of think.
No, well, that's it. Why would
you're
you?
not an expert in it, but
No.
you are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly.
don't, in the nicest possible way, don't trust your family members. They don't mean anything bad by it. They actually think they're helping you out. It's
Yeah,
like,
of
oh,
course.
don't waste money on a will.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need one. And the expert in the pub that we often hear about as a, Trivial Pursuit champion will say, your common law husband and wife, and you don't need it for this reason. Or why don't you just do one of those template things? But as Helen just explained there's so much that you can't know, that if you can only know what you know, and if you try and do this yourself or decide not to do it, you don't know what you're missing out on. So please give us a call, speak to a member of the client care team. If you don't like what you hear, we'll just give you your money back.
That's fine.
You know, you can't lose on this one. We'll only ever produce a document for you once you're 100% happy with the advice that we've given you, that could include things like inheritance tax. And we'll only produce a document for you when you're 100% happy with the instructions you've given us, because of course it's your will. And that's the all important thing here. It's yours, it's suitable to your situation, it's a bespoke document. And more importantly, it means that you don't pass away with a government will that won't give you inheritance tax advice, that won't actually do anything for you other than provide a default position for distributing your estate. So do something amazing for you, do something amazing for your loved ones. Don't leave anything to chance, and speak to an expert who's going to give you all the advice and make sure you understand it, and then let you decide how much of that advice you accept or take on board. And ultimately, you're going to end up with the document that you want, that's right for you.
And make sure you get it right.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
it's completely personal. So you're really good because you just ask all the right questions.
Yeah, that's right. I
We
mean,
don't
as you
need to know
said,
anything.
It's just
do
like
we?
a conversation. So we'll make, obviously today is just about securing the offers. There's no questions to be asked at this time of morning. You don't need to think about that at all. What we will do is then make an appointment at a time that's convenient to you, so that you can do this in the comfort of your own home. You can sit on the sofa with a cup of tea, and we will ask all those questions as part of the conversation.
And they're not invasive questions.
They're-
The
it's
questions
just
that you've got
normal
the answers
questions.
readily to, but you just won't know
Yeah.
why we're asking.
They're all things again that we wouldn't think about, because when I think about a will, I don't know what. Initially, I just think property, money-wise, where you're
money
leaving it,
on,
or
yeah.
hadn't even thought about children, or
So one question will be, well, if you want your children to inherit, what age do you want them to inherit? And people will be like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Can I actually stipulate that? And they'll know the answer. They'll know straight away, oh yeah, definitely not under 25. You know, I want them to be 25. So they'll know the answer, but it's not a question that they would have thought of before they had that conversation with us.
So it was just talking to you that you said, well,
Yeah.
have you got children? So, yeah.
It
That-
just
It just
those
comes out as
seeds.
part of the
Yeah.
conversation, yeah.
and it could be pets,
Yeah.
not just children.
Yeah, people think more of their pets than their family in some cases, but that's what's important to them. You know, they want to make sure that if they're not around anymore, that someone's going to take care of their beloved dog or cats, and make sure also that perhaps there's finances there available to the person who's taking over as well, or leaving it to charity, perhaps a rehoming charity that they know will then be able to rehome that animal, but they can make a charitable donation to them as well. So there's lots of options there, and again, this is all the sorts of things that comes out in
It's
conversation.
all
with
personal. It's it's your will. All we do is ask you the questions to get to where you want to be. And the most important thing out of all this is, at the end of it, you've got a will that's right for you and your family, that's going to do what you want it to do, and you've taken yourself out of the rules of intestacy, and that's the important thing. Even the most basic of wills that you've done for yourself is better than the rules of intestacy, because it's your will.
And it's still taking control, isn't it?
Taking control.
It is, and it's so important, because I think perhaps you're perhaps at home, and perhaps you're married with children, and you know where you want everything to go. Perhaps you're sat at home right now thinking, well, there's only me. What's the point of me making a will?
There's still important things that you need to think about. Somebody still needs to deal with your assets when you're no longer around. Even if it is just, you know, if you're in a rented property, you don't own the property, someone's still got to sort out your utilities and, you know, close down your bank accounts. So you're appointing an executor to deal with that. And, you know, people will have opinions on who they want to do that. So even if you think, I've got nothing to leave, or actually I don't care about my family, well, people who say that to me, I don't care about my family, will then do something else. You know, leave your assets to your friends or to charity. Because if you die intestate, chances are some of them are going to get it. So actually take control of your situation, write your own will, and again, it's bespoke and you've taken control of it. Don't leave it to the rules of intestacy that are showing on the screen now, which are very black and white questions and are designed to suit everybody in the UK.
That's a really good point you made there. It could go to the family you don't want it to go to if you don't do anything.
Yeah, a lot of people, the first thing they say to us is, I don't want
so-and-so
that can be the driving force, can't it? Whatever happens, I just want to make sure that this person, you know, because there's obviously there's been a breakdown there.
And if they haven't written a will, this is what's going to happen, and that person's probably on there that they don't want it to go.
Because it will treat, if it's say one of your children that you've fallen out with, the intestacy rules will treat all children equally, so they'll all inherit equally. You know, irrespective of the child that you've not seen for 20 years, who you've fallen out with and you never speak to, and the other child who you see every day and who's taken care of you for the last 10 years of your life. They will both be treated equally under the rules of intestacy. And the only way to do something about that is to write your own will. And it's such an easy thing to do.
Yeah, because we hear quite a lot that a parent will say something like, well, you know, our John knows that I don't want our Sam to have anything.
Yeah.
And they assume that that's enough.
That's okay.
Don't worry, my eldest knows that my youngest has been nothing but he stole from me this. We hear all these kind of horror stories, and I don't think we really need a will, because we've already told, you know, our John that we don't want this to happen, and that's fine. John might know that, but if you pass away without a will, the question will be asked: do you have children? If the answer is yes, well, your children share equally from your estate. That's the law.
And that could cause such a family upset, couldn't it?
Oh, yeah, look, the fridge magnets exist that say that friends are the family that you choose for yourself. Because, you know, unfortunately, blood isn't thicker than water sometimes, you know, and families aren't perfect. But we've got testamentary freedom in the UK, so we can decide what happens to our estate when we've passed away, but you can only decide that if you make a will. Otherwise, the government's going to make that decision for you. And unfortunately, with the government will, not only does it not care about you, every distribution is equal to whichever classes of beneficiary it ends up with, whether it be children, aunts and uncles, brothers or sisters. And again, I'll stress this, 200,000 clients we've got, we've never written a will that mirrors the rules of intestacy. Because when you tell people this is a free will, we could draft the rules of intestacy as a will, believe it or not, and say, here's a will, it doesn't mention any executors, but this is what's going to happen. This is the free will that you've got, and hand it to someone, and they look at it and say, but I don't want my children to inherit equally, or, well, where's my watch to my son? Or, well, my dog's not in here. And actually, so my children are going to inherit at 18. No, that's too young. All those things that you can do for yourself, the rules of intestacy don't care about.
Take it away, don't they?
Yeah, so as I said, there's almost like a subconscious or a secondary decision that's happening if you don't make your own will. Whether you're fully aware of it or not, you're actually accepting the government will. And I promise you that's not what you want.
And like that scenario you told us about earlier in the show, about that gentleman who was single.
Yeah, it was awful, that.
Yeah.
I think it was awful because his mum was on camera for a bit as well, so you could see the pain was still real. You know, no parent wants to lose a child. But the backstory to this is when her son passed away, it was well into his 40s, you know, as an adult, successful, but had never married and never had children. But the backstory was that when he was born, his dad, for whatever reason, left the family. So mum was left to bring up the two boys on her own as a single parent, which she did. And the boys never heard from the dad, not so much as a birthday card. So for decades, they have nothing to do with the dad. So that's the reality of the situation. Sadly, this gentleman passes away unexpectedly, but he's never made a will. So he's died intestate, so he's got the government will. The first thing that's asked of him is, was he married in a civil partnership? The answer was no. The next question is, do you have children? He never had children, so the answer is no. The next question, you may or may not be able to see it on the screen there, says, do you have parents? The answer, of course, was yes, because we could see his mum as part of this interview process. It was then explained that his mum, as his next of kin, for all intents and purposes, had to track down her ex-husband who
left her.
Yeah.
It was his parents who were next of kin, his mum and his dad.
But the answer, do you have parents? Yes. It's distributed equally between the parents.
The two of them.
So this father, for whatever reasons he had, wasn't in his son's life. His son had made a life for himself with the help of his mum, and obviously they were obviously quite tight family unit. But half of everything he worked hard for went to the dad that he never knew.
And she had to find him.
And should be in
legal obligations.
Absolutely devastated already, and then she's got to find the man that left her. And
it's not a whilst that's an awful backstory, which is why obviously it made a slot on the TV, and that's why it stayed with me and why I still talk about it now. It's not that extreme of a situation.
No.
You know, if we all think about our
now.
own personal situations, no, there might be just a wrinkle in our family makeup, or there might be just something you want to do a little bit different. There's something that you want to do. But
it really made me realise that whatever situation you're in, you should have a will.
Everyone.
Helen always uses a word I forget to use, and that's control. When you make your own will, you've taken control of what's going to happen when you're not here. If you don't make a will, you control nothing. It'll basically come down to the rules of intestacy, and that asks a series of yes or no questions that doesn't care about you or your family or what people think or believe should have happened.
Presume. Yeah.
Even, you know, most people, when they hear that story, go, well, that doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem fair. But it doesn't matter, because the law.
And he wouldn't have wanted that.
No.
And his family knew.
Yeah, you can definitely reasonably assume that. Yeah.
And we, as you said earlier, the difficult thing for us is that we know if we'd have just had 15 minutes with him before that happened and had explained to him what would happen if he died without
That's why this programme is so good.
He'd have done something.
Sending that text this morning, or phoning 0333 600 2600 might not seem like a huge thing to you right now. And the half an hour having a consultation might not seem like a huge thing now, but I promise you've done something amazing for your family. I can say that hand on heart because it's what we see and what we do every single day. Don't underestimate how selfless and how powerful and how amazing making a will is. It might seem like the dullest thing to spend your money on and spend time on. I promise you it's not. What you're doing for your family is amazing, and this thing about taking control for you, but for your family as well, it's actually invaluable. I mean, I say that, I mean, we've put a price on it, $89.25, but in all seriousness, you won't know just how much of an impact that had, and depending on your situation, you won't realise just how much weight's lifted off your shoulders at the end of consultation, because by the time you get to the end of it, only then will you have fully realised what potentially could have happened had you not made a will. So that's why some people get to the end of consultation and go, my God, I'm so glad I did that, because I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't realise that. I didn't realise this, and that's why we do these shows. We just want to shake that complacency. Just ask yourself why you think you don't need one, and if you've not got a really good answer, then give us a call. And if you don't like what you hear, we'll give you your money back.
As well.
If you do, you'll have taken control. You'll have done something amazing.
And that scenario you just explained, Helen, that's why everyone needs a will.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. Whatever your circumstances, whether you're single, married, with young kids, we talked about guardians and how important it is to appoint guardians within your will. There are so many different scenarios. Even in the 3 hours of this show, there's absolutely no way we could go through every single scenario. So that's why we need people to pick up the phone and just have that conversation with us. Talk to us about your circumstances, and we'll explain to you why it's so important that you.
And that is the great thing when we talk to you, and this is another sort of incident you told us about. There was a lady, she was in a relationship, she had a child, but when you spoke to her, she was still married to her husband. And she had no idea that if she passed, her money wouldn't have, her possessions wouldn't have gone to her new partner and child. It would have gone to her husband.
We're back to the flow chart with the intestacy rules. The first question, are you married? Black and white, not are you married and still together, or how long have you been separated?
None of that.
There's none of that. It's simply black and white. If you're married,
do you not love him anymore?
Your spouse is entitled to inherit, and she had absolutely no idea.
No, you
So
wouldn't.
she'd kind of walked away from this relationship years ago, for whatever reason decided not bothered about getting divorced because, you know, I don't want to get married again or anything like that. I'm just going to walk away and move on with my life. But she didn't realise that her children wouldn't inherit.
Her personal situation changed, but legally her marital status remained the same. She was still married. So when you pass away, when the question is asked, are you married in a civil partnership? Yes. The next question is, your spouse gets the first £322,000 of your estate. It's that simple.
So that's why we need to speak to you, isn't it? And I know some people might be at home right now thinking, okay, yeah, I'm going to write a will, I'm going to do a template. We have to do...
Well, we have to get it right, don't we?
Please don't do a template, because you can't possibly know the questions that we know.
No, that's it.
And also, if you make a mistake, there's no one that you can turn to blame or to fix that. You know, we're that confident in what we do that we carry something called professional indemnity insurance, which covers us and you, if you like, £5 million. That means if we make a mistake that costs you or your beneficiaries money, you're insured for up to £5 million. So that's how confident we are. And touch wood, we've never had a claim on that professional indemnity insurance, because we do the job right, because this is all we do for a living. Our consultants are very highly trained, and they deal with our clients day in, day out, making wills every single day. We appreciate that for most of our clients, and especially if you're going to do a template, that's probably the first and only time you're going to do it. So how could you possibly know everything that you should know around things like inheritance tax, around how distribution should work?
Just the wording, isn't it?
Well, Helen mentioned earlier, you know, sometimes people will say, well, why does it have to sound so complicated? You know, they'll use a word like issue instead of children. It's because it's recognised in the courts, and it means that there's no ambiguity. But we'll explain any legal terminology to you anyway, to make sure that you fully understand the document and you're happy with it. And then it's guaranteed to work. But we've seen that many horror stories where you can see the intent on paper, but because of the way it's written, because they've just written it as a layperson would, I want this to happen, I want that to happen. We've seen situations where grandparents have left cash gifts to their grandchildren, but haven't realised that the cash gifts should have been left after they were both dead. They've made and Helen mentioned a story earlier where they've not actually made provision for each other in the wills, because they've made this assumption that naturally, because they're married, they would be. But actually in situations where only one of you owns the property, it can create a real problem.
Of course.
We had a situation recently where one of our clients who did a will with us phoned and said there was a problem with a dad's will, because a dad had done a template, and it had basically triggered a liability where the estate had to give £160,000 to grandchildren. Because well, I shouldn't laugh, but when he wrote it, he wrote, I want £20,000 to go to each of my grandchildren. At the time he wrote it, there was 3 grandchildren. He'd not updated it when he died, there was 8, but worse than that, it was to go when he died, when actually there wasn't enough cash in the estate.
Because his partner was still alive.
His wife should have stayed in the house, but now with so it's a real mess. His intent was clear.
Of course.
But if he'd have spoke to us, we'd have made sure that they were both protected after first death, that when they'd both passed away and there was enough cash in the estate because the house could be sold, etc., that each of the grandchildren would have got £20,000 if that's still what they wanted to do, and then the remainder was to go to the children. Believe it or not, that's really easy for us to do.
Yeah.
And because he didn't know what he was doing, he didn't understand the principles of first death and second death, because why would he?
No.
He'd created this first death liability cash gift to grandchildren, hadn't updated it since he originally did it, when his situation was different with, you know, the liquid assets in his estate, and just created a real horrible mess when it was clear what he wanted to achieve, but he just made a mess of it. Now, you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but you think, well, for what he paid for the template, he could have used a company like us, and they wouldn't have that heartache and all that problem.
Expertise.
He didn't mean to make a mistake.
No, of course he didn't.
But I wouldn't risk it. I always talk about, you know, if I've got a toothache, I go to a dentist. If my car breaks down, I go to a garage. You know, I go to a professional who knows what they're doing. I don't understand, if you've got a toothache, you're not going to start pulling your own tooth. So if you want a will, I don't know why you wouldn't go to a professional will writing company as opposed to just trying to do it yourself. Let us take the responsibility for it. Let us do it right for you.
Now, before the end of the show, we've got to remind you of the offers that Simple Law have got and how to get in touch. It's so easy to take advantage and just get the ball rolling. And
it's so affordable. I think you think it's going to be really expensive and it's really complicated. It's completely the opposite. You've got amazing prices. Even at full price, it's money well spent. But have a look at that. Family and estate will should be £180, £89.25. You're securing that deal if you get in touch tonight, and you can split that cost to £29.27 over 3 payments, and I bet you spend that actually on coffee a month easily. So that is money well spent, knowing that you've given that last gift to all your loved ones, and what you want to happen to what you've worked so hard for is actually going to happen. Then lasting power of attorney that we've covered over the show.
We've talked about lasting powers of attorney. If you want to go for that, the suggested retail price of $325 comes down to $179.25 or $59.75 on your first of 3 interest-free payments. And then the best value of all is if you go for the will and the lasting power of attorney, because that should be £505 down to $249 or £83 on your first of 3 interest-free payments. Remember, the first 250 people who make the appointment will receive that free book. And this book, basically, it has everything that you need in one place. If anyone passes away, it's not just about bills and utilities and vehicles. Your social media, your tablet and your mobile phone, passwords can all be in that one place, so that it just makes everything so much easier, doesn't it?
You could lose so much if you didn't have a password for a phone or a tablet. That could be photographs, could be really important emails, all things we don't even think about, but it's all in that book. And I really do think everybody should have this book. And if you're securing the deals tonight, 250 of you will get it. To secure the deals, have a look at how you can get in touch and take a photo of this. Sadly, we are coming towards an end, but you will still catch them on the phones. You can either go on to simplerlaw.co.uk/ShopOnTV, or you can jump onto the phones right now just before they leave, which is 0333 600 2600. But actually, at this time of night, you're probably off to bed, so texting is a great option.
Text the word will to 66777 and the team will get in touch with you after 11 o'clock. So that's the word will to 66777, or you can go through our website as well. That's another easy way to get in touch. Got to say a huge thank you as always to the team from Simpler Law, to Ian and Helen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll see you very, very soon, no doubt. But do just get in touch. Do just start that ball rolling. Make that first step, whether it's a will, whether it's a lasting power of attorney. This is where you can start.
Sometimes we just keep putting things off, don't we? And it's so important that you have that will. Don't let the summer holidays go by and then suddenly the kids are back at school and then suddenly it's Christmas and you still haven't sorted that will. Actually get in touch today and have that peace of mind that you know you're going to get it sorted. And honestly, it'd be one of the best things you've ever done.
And Simpler Law, the experts in the field to get you started, whether it's a will or an LPA. We'll see you later.
Take care.